Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second week of the 2023 Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, as brought to you by Gone Skipping Racing, sponsored by Musical Money, and hosted, of course, on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And as our drivers get set to compete in rounds 3 and 4 today, in the series that aims to keep the Skippy alive, well, we've got an action-packed schedule, and what a brilliant circuit for us to get the racing underway today at. It's none other than the Sebring International Raceway. Located in the American state of Florida, this circuit is arguably the ultimate test of driver endurance and indeed mechanical endurance for a machine, for the simple reason this circuit is based on the site of a former World War II air base known as the Hendricks Army Airfield. But whilst back then it was servicing B-17s, today it's going to be servicing our drivers with an opportunity to score big. But the change about this circuit and why it's an endurance test is it is a combination of modern asphalt and old school concrete. As you can see in the pictures behind us at the moment, with the circuit interweaving onto the old runways, well, the concrete slabs of the runways have remained there and are cut up into partitions, whereas other parts of the circuit, the closer in corners, convert to traditional asphalt. And what that means for our drivers is they'll be transitioning road surfaces like no other, and over the concrete in particular, the bumps will feel hard and indeed the suspensions will be rocked. But who's going to be able to avoid steering off circuit today and keep it on the tarmac all the way through and staying clear of the carnage of the concrete? We're about to find out. But before we get ready to go racing, let's take you through your schedule tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. And we can see that in approximately what is 19 minutes time, we'll be heading into our qualifying session for tonight. 15 minutes in duration, all the drivers out of the circuit and all looking to set themselves up well for success in our first race of the day, and that'll be the round 3 sprint, kicking off at approximately 8:45, and that'll be 20 minutes in duration, where our drivers will be going all in, all out, no pit stops expected, unless they pick up damage, of course, and need to come into the pit, but otherwise no pit stops, and it's all about pace from the very start to the end of the race. Then we'll take a brief breather before returning at approximately what will be at 9:10 this evening for the gridding process for the feature race. Our round 4 feature, 40 minutes in duration, double the duration of the sprint, and of course for that mandatory pit stop. You're watching this broadcast live on YouTube. Indeed, you're tuning in via TX141TX or the YouTube channel under the name of Paul Walsh. But who is TX141TX or Paul Walsh? Well, allow me to introduce myself. I'm your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action for the entirety of this series. And well, we got things underway with an absolutely stellar start last time out at Charlotte in North Carolina of the US. And as we look to our calendar and continue our way on through, we make our way gradually on down. And today it is the 24th of March and it is the pair of rounds at Sebring. After today, we'll be heading down under to Australia for the Bathurst Racing Circuit, also known as Mount Panorama. And there in rounds 5 and 6, it's going to all be about being brave over the mountain and capitalising on the straight line speed up and down the mountain. And the 31st of March is definitely going to be a very different tone of circuit compared to the opening 2 venues. But we then return to the United States. We're making a good number of trips across the Pacific Ocean for Road Atlanta, and that will be round 7 and 8 on the 7th of April. And then the roller coaster ride of road racing. We're going to be seeing our drivers charge over the hills and footfalls of the Brazelton Circuit in the state of Georgia, but who's going to be able to keep it calm and keep it confident all the way through. Then in rounds 9 and 10, we make our way to Summit Point, another American circuit, and on the 14th of April, it's an old school style of circuit. Our drivers will absolutely love it around there and really bring together all the elements of the first 4 venues. But then they make their way to the 6th venue, back to Australia once again across the Pacific Ocean for the Phillip Island Circuit. Typically playing host to V8 supercars, of course, but we'll be playing host to our Skip Barber Formula 2000 machines, and our drivers there in rounds 11 and 12 as they head towards the halfway point will definitely be thinking about how they can capitalise on their machinery on the 21st of April. Then we make our way to neighbouring Japan at the Okayama Circuit on the 28th of April, rounds 13 and 14, and they're also previously known as the T1 Ida Circuit, a very tight and twisty circuit, but one that requires our drivers to capitalise on the downforce of their machines and keep their calm under pressure, of course, with it being so tight and difficult to overtake. And then we'll be heading over to Canada for the Charles Villeneuve Circuit, also known as Montreal, for rounds 15 and 16 on the 5th of May, and they're in what is effectively a street circuit, albeit not in full nature, being in a national park. We see in our drivers take on the change of the Canadian circuit with its multitude of chicanes and extended straights and heavy braking zones, and the brakes are going to take a battering, there's no question about it. Then round 17 and 18, perhaps the round that everybody's dreading, albeit I think some out there absolutely love the combined version of the Nürburgring, and that's exactly what they're in store for, the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke or the Nürburgring combined on the 12th of May, and there in Germany we'll definitely see the test of our drivers' pace and their raw abilities like no other test in the season. And then rounds 19 and 20 we go to our one and only official street circuit for the calendar, and that is of course the Detroit Grand Prix at a while, and they'll be on the 19th of May before we then head into our penultimate venue and staying in the United States the remainder of the season. That'll be in the state of New York at Watkins Glen International for rounds 21 and 22, and you could argue it's going to be Skip Barber meets NASCAR with the relative pace of the circuit before we then head to Virginia, the state of Virginia, for the Virginia International Raceway, also known as VIR, in rounds 23 and 24, and that'll be on the 2nd of June to conclude proceedings. But with a packed calendar and still plenty to go, well, we now need to take a look to our championship standings after 2 rounds. So after 2 rounds of racing, how does it look so far, and do we have any favourites up front? Well, Nathan Wade leads the way on 75 points. And we can see there by an advantage of 4 points over Cristian Pérez, Wade was the most consistent over the first 2 rounds. However, Cristian Pérez pulled off a blinder in the feature race, the only driver to complete the entire race without pitting due to fuel saving. And of course, there was a bit of deliberation between the stewards as to what would happen with Pérez's result. Would he be disqualified for not pitting, unlike everybody else, with the rules saying that he had to pit? Alternatively, would he keep his result? And it was decided unanimously he would keep his result for the simple reason he demonstrated just how strong his fuel saving capabilities are. Indeed, he caught out our stewards as a result there regards to the fuel setting, and we'll come on to that very shortly, how that has been tweaked for tonight to make sure it doesn't happen again. But Pérez holding on to that result means that he's taken at P2 in the championship, and on 71 points there, only up with 6 points clear of Stefan Herman, with the top 3 they're being separated by 10 points, but it's close all the way down to P5, with Mark Beckhouse and Jeff Randall completing the run there, 25 points covering at the top 5, and then we do have a gap of 18 points to Paul Smithhurst in P6. Smithhurst looked comfortable towards the end of the feature race, and he'll be looking to try and get into his comfort zone a little bit earlier tonight to get some major points on the board, and he's going to need to. And Nick Vaughan Roberts there in P7 on 28 points, only 6 clear of the trio of Clark Williams, Chris Wayne and Kevin Budgeon, and we can see there the 3 drivers all collected together with their results, and Williams ahead of Wayne and Budgeon based on result countback. But as we then come on to outside of the top 10, where it's Rasmus Vuori there in P11, the Flying Finn, and known as the Flying Finn for his demonstration in qualifying of just how fast he was at Charlotte Roval, but the downside was in the sprint race in particular, it all unfolded in disaster, and Vuori will be looking to try and make amends today and make sure he takes pole position from the outset and doesn't drop in either race. If he does so, he'll be right back up inside the top 10 before we know it, but you have Stefan Krumpholz chasing after him, only a point off currently, with David J. Burns, Terry McGrauther and Peter van der Noord all there closing up. Indeed, the run to P15 right now very close and trying to get into that top 10. It's like gold dust for our drivers. Remco Placer there in at P16 on 11 points, 2 clear of Benjamin Harris, with Titus de Jong, Luke Woodtower and Ryan Jackson completing the top 20. Then outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about out of our 31 participants in the opening round, AJ Campbell there in P21, equal on points with Paolo Anzioso and Rodi van der Meerden, and then we can see 3 points behind Daniel Tufts in P24, Leon Rodriguez in P25, and then not scoring any points in the opening 2 rounds, Dario Frattini, Marcel Brunschwiller, Rotit Putizek, Nigel Easy, Ollie Pimley and Dave Devine, but of course they have an opportunity today to score more. But as we come onto our circuit for today then, it is none other than the Sebring International Raceway, and we use the full international layout located in Sebring in Highlands County of the state of Florida in the US of A. As you can see from the circuit map provided by iRacing.com, and thank you to them for their wonderful circuit maps and of course their brilliant simulator. This is a circuit which has a wide variety of corner sequences, straights and indeed surface changes over the course, but you can't quite see those surface changes on the circuit map. However, you can gather they might be towards the end of the lap, given the fact we do make our way onto the old runways. But as our drivers make their way across the start-finish line in towards turn number 1, they'll go into the fast-flying left-hand there, which is all about balancing the throttle as best as possible. We're charging their way through the Kinker 2 and into the heavy braking zone at turn number 3. Racing on traditional asphalt at this point in time, they'll be braking their way down hard through the gearbox into the tight and twisty section of turns 3, 4 and 5. We'll see some overtaking opportunities into turn 3, but then it's all going to be about the exit from turn 5 and carrying all the speed through Big Bend up towards the hairpin at turn number 7. There, perhaps where the heaviest braking zones on the circuit, our drivers will come down the gearbox to the slightest corner, and as they make their way out of the hairpin, they'll rise up through the Fangio complex to turns 8 and 9 flat out, while breaking their way into Cunningham at turn number 10. Going through the right-hander there, a sharp right-hand, right-angle corner. They'll head into Collier, we should say, at turn number 11, before making their way through the Kinker 12 and braking immediately into Towel Corner at turn 13. Make it out of that, they'll need to get back to the throttle as soon as possible, and this is where we see the circuit start to push more towards the concrete slabs, while drivers coming down through Bishop Corner at turn number 14, before braking hard into 15 and setting themselves up for Le Mans Corner at turn 16. There, if they go wide, they'll find themselves on the grass and hand to recover. Get it right, however, and they'll carry all the speed down the back straight, down the Allman straight, straight into turn 17 into Sunset Bend, and 17 being the final corner in the circuit, and taking the name of Sunset Bend because when the sun is setting, it's right in the eyes of the drivers. There, with a very late apex, it's all about your entry line. Do you decide to go deep and bring the car through to late apex, or do you decide to go close and early, compromise your speed, but put on a defensive strategy and try to get the power down early on corner exit? Well, there's multiple ways to cut Sunset Bend, but who'll be able to find the best way to do so, lap in, lap out? Well, they head to the timeline and do it all again. But as we said earlier, no major elevation change on this circuit. It's very flat, and it all comes down to being able to nail the corner sequences and carry the speed along the extended straights. Get it right, and you could definitely be breaking away early on in the proceedings. But speaking of proceedings, of course, we can't go underway without rules, and let's give you a reminder of the rule set. In terms of car setup, we have one change there highlighted in red. We'll talk about it shortly. But firstly, this is an open setup series, and of course, it is a revelation of the Skip Barber Formula 2000. We're keeping the Skippy alive, and that means it's completely open setups. And in terms of what our drivers are actually able to tweak on the car, I did have a little bit of a word with our host, Jeff Randall, where he explained to me in between the last two rounds and say what exactly our drivers can touch on the car, well, as well as the fuel, the tyre pressures, and the brake balance, which are some perhaps more obvious things on the car. They're not allowed to adjust much else on the spring perch offset, which raises and lowers the car via small amounts. And what that essentially means is you want the car as low as possible because of the ground effect on the car, and you don't want air running under the car for downforce. But of course, when you've got a circuit that's rather bumpy or it's got high curves, then you want to raise the car to a degree, as otherwise the car may end up bottoming out, scraping, and indeed bouncing off the curves. And the other thing as well is the anti-roll bar, which adjusts the stiffness of the rear of the car, where you want as much roll bar as possible on the rear for the simple reason that it will cause the car to naturally snap loose under rotation into a corner, and a loose car on the rear means you get more rotation and therefore you can get through the corner faster. However, don't control it and you may end up going round through excessive oversteer. The opposite is true. If you go for less anti-roll bar, you've got a much more stable car, but at the same time it means that you've got a car that's got less potential apex and corner speed on average. So it's going to be a little bit of a gamble there in terms of how much anti-roll bar you take, but normally most of our drivers are running maximum possible anti-roll bar in order to go full attack into each and every corner. But coming on to our car fuel loads, we can see they're restricted to 60% for all race day sessions. This has changed from 70%. And that was, of course, informed by Cristian Pérez's absolutely brilliant win in the feature at Charlotte Roval, where he was able to make the 70% fuel tank go all the way to the end unscathed without needing the pit stop. But now we're down to 60%. That will force our drivers to pit in the feature race. And in terms of qualifying, an open qualifying format shall be used. I get mixed up over my Fs there. And that is where all of our drivers will take to the circuit together, and they'll all be looking to set their best possible lap times. But, of course, trying to find space at a circuit such as Sebring is one thing, and actually executing the ideal qualifying lap is another. But coming on to the extension of our rules then, what about in the races, I hear you ask? Well, in general, races shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition, with one fast repair being available, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more points in a given race, and a driver shall be disqualified if they accumulate 25 or more instant points in a given race. In the sprint race, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, and in the feature race, well, firstly, the grid shall be set based on the results of the sprint race, with the top 10 finishing positions inverted. What that means is, in simple English, the winner of the sprint race will start P10 on the grid for the feature race. We work our way down through the finishers in the top 10, and the 10th place finisher in the sprint race will start on pole for the feature, and then our 11th place and downwards finishers in the sprint race, well, they'll be starting exactly where they finished in the sprint on the grid in the feature. And there is also one mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here from. We're approximately 6.5 minutes away from it, and that is going racing, of course. And as our drivers make the way on around currently, well, it's a relatively quiet circuit at this time. We do have a few drivers yet to join still, but we have got the numbers gradually coming on in, and indeed with 30 drivers in attendance last time out, we are expecting a few more to arrive. We've got 19 currently. We do have some newcomers for today, including JT Kopinen and also Jack Atkinson, and you have to excuse us, ladies and gentlemen, as it is their first round of the season. We will be loading a little bit of driver data in the background, and that does mean that you'll see the overlay on screen refresh a couple of times, but don't worry, don't panic. It's not that your eyesight's deceiving you or anything along those lines. You've got internet connectivity issues whatsoever. That is just all part of making sure that we've got our driver data loaded, and therefore you can see what you need to see in terms of where our drivers are on circuit, and indeed all the battling that is ongoing. As everybody gets set right now, we do say hello to all of you tuning in from home, and if you haven't got yourself a nice cool beverage or a hot beverage, given it's still just making a way out of winter into spring currently, at least in the United Kingdom where I'm based, I can tell you it is still very cold. Well, go get yourself a nice beverage. Also perhaps get yourself a little bit of popcorn, for the simple reason that you're going going to be into an absolute cracker tonight, and you've only got what is 6.5 minutes to go before we head into the qualifying session. But as we do see here, Gordon van der Bergen making his way around the German driver for Sickhead Racing, coming out of the final corner here and getting himself all set up and making sure to keep himself smart and tidy coming out the final corner. It is going to be just as big a test of consistency today as it will be outright pace, because the Sebring International Raceway circuit, one known for putting drivers through their paces, we mentioned earlier, but the thing about this circuit in particular is it really does bite back. If you get it wrong or push the car too hard, you are going to feel it through the suspension of the car, and in return you may just end up in the proverbial wall, alternatively onto the grass, and having to try and recontrol the car and losing out on a major opportunity to take the win come the end of the race. And that is exactly what nobody wants to have happen, of course, is losing out when they're in the lead, because that's the last thing that you want to have on your mind. You want to just be running away to take that checkered flag. But as we do see here, Van der Bergen are making their way down towards turn number 7 into the hairpin, and coming on through, of course, Van der Bergen in the fan delivery machine. He stands out with the colours, and a good number of drivers are running special liveries in dedication to either their teams, alternatively the sponsors of the cars. And as he makes his way on around right now, you can see there the overlay just refreshing where we have it loaded a bit more driver data, and we do look to Mark Beckhouse as he makes his way through Sunset Bend, the Speedboard Academy driver. And well, Beckhouse has shown strong pace over the course of the races last time out, but of course this is the man that everybody is looking to wonder whether he can put it all together today. Rasmus Vuori, the privateer from Finland, who of course dominated qualifying at Charlotte. Can he do it again? Well, we can see here in this practice session at the moment, 300 separates him from the fastest time as set by Beckhouse. But of course, we can't read too much into qualifying for the simple reason, well, into qualifying I should say, into practice, but we can read a lot more into qualifying. And the reason we can't read too much into practice is because we do not know the state of our drivers' cars. Indeed, those laps, are they being set on low fuel, medium fuel, high fuel, heavily worn tyres, new tyres, and all of that adds together into add a little bit of ambiguity and complexity to the analysis of practice. But when we do go into qualifying, that's where we start to see the true nature come out for our drivers, because they'll all be running low fuel, as he teaches de Jong there, losing the rear of the car and breaking into Sunset and catching it just in time for RT Racing, did the Dutchman, as otherwise that would have been a hefty repair bill. And as he comes on through and up towards the timeline once again, well, currently almost a whole second off of the fastest lap in this final practice session, but looking to get himself all put together. But as we do say hello there to a number of you in the YouTube chat, and in particular we do call out Dan Schuring, who says go 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 roadie, and I do believe there he's also saying keep it on the roadie. I love the pun there for roadie event the maiden. We do have quite the fan club in the YouTube chat for the STN drive. We love to see it, of course, as we see the Dutchman making his way on around, and of course involved in quite a horrific incident at the bus stop chicane at Charlotte. Thankfully a little bit shaken up in the car, but otherwise all back and ready to go racing. And as we also do say hello there to Jeff Randall, who says hello Paul and hello chat. Good evening to you, Jeff, and looking forward to seeing how you get on. I know you're in the pit lane at the moment, just waiting to go racing. The itch is there to scratch. And we also do say hello to Miv Racer 77, who says hi Paul, here's to a good race. And thank you Miv Racer, and here's to good racing from all drivers. We do wish all drivers the best of luck, of course. And we also say hello to Logan McKinsey there. Good evening to you, Logan. I hope you're doing well. And we also see Jeff there asking Dan Schuring, would Dan be able to join for the rest of the season? Unfortunately, he can't at this time, but we would love to see you one day out on the circuit. Dan, even if you're not quite on the pace of our fastest drivers here, this league is for everybody, of course, and its ultimate intention, of course, is to celebrate and keep the spirit of the Skip Barber Formula 2000 well and truly alive. Because this car, whilst it's been superseded in most official series now by the Formula Ford at 1600, particularly on iRacing, there's only a small collection of private leagues that keep running this car, and well, the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy is one of the ones right at the top, making sure that we keep the Skip Barber on flowing. But as we see Van der Maiden making his way through the final corner once again, we do say hello to the newcomer here on screen of JT Kopinen tonight. And as we see him heading on down here, the privateer in the 719 machine, well, the Finn keeping it calm, and of course yet to put a time on the board. So of course this is where we get a little bit of a question mark around some of our drivers. You'll remember that we did have a good number of drivers in attendance last time out, 31 in attendance, but we've still got some additional names who were not there, including Kopinen, and tonight expected to attend for at least the sprint round from what I gathered down in the paddock. And the question will be, where does he fit into the relative order? The same question could be asked of Jack Atkinson, as we do see here the Briton, the privateer, making his way out of Le Mans corner. And it's these newcomers, of course, that everybody looks to and wonders where exactly are they going to fit into the pecking order, because of course after the first 2 rounds you'd think that everyone's established where they are, or we're starting to see that established order, but not necessarily. In this circuit, very different, as we said earlier, compared to Charlotte last time out. Well, the emphasis here is all about car control and the fact that you want to try and return to full throttle as soon as possible in order to carry the speed on the extended straights. It's small clusters of corners followed up by extended straightaways, where at Charlotte, by comparison, the infield section was a whole sequence of fast flying corners where it's all about balancing the throttle. The average A-spec speed gradually came down as you went towards the end of the infield with hairpins, and then you had the oval banking with the slipstream in effect, enabling drivers to make amends if they lost a good amount of time through the hairpins to just gain it in the toe on the extended curve straight. But here we don't necessarily have that opportunity, and our drivers will find themselves instead really having to focus on carrying the speed onto each straightaway. As we see Skips Racing, Budgeon making his way out of turn number 5 and onwards towards Big Bend at turn number 6, coming on through. Long live the Skippy there, says Miv Racer. Love to see it. And as we see Budgeon making his way up towards turn number 7, well, now we are less than a minute from going in to the qualifying session, and well, the fastest driver out there is Mark Beckhouse at this time, but of course with Rasmus Vuori only 300ths off, and a further 200ths off was Gordon van der Bergen. It is fully open at the moment. We have got the top 4 drivers in this practice session separated by just a tiny bit over a second, with Jeff Randall being the 4th driver in that quartet, and now it's going to put pay to the dividends with our drivers as they get ready to take on the circuit in anger for the first time tonight. And well, of course, qualifying just one part of it, and well, the question you may be asking at this point is, well, what's the overtaking opportunities like here? Well, they are plentiful. It should be said, this circuit really does bring alive close racing and therefore battling, and you can see that while certain sequences of corners are quite tight, particularly the run up towards turns 3 through to 5, and also the run through turn 10 into 13, the majority of that does have quite a wide open road surface, and particularly with these cars being quite narrow, that does mean that overtaking opportunities are plentiful. But as we head into qualifying then, we have the green flags waving, and it is time to see who can put the pace down and deliver in a 15-minute window. Was all our drivers make their way out to the pit lane. Then we do see Jeff Randall heading on out first and foremost for Gone Skipping Racing, of course series organiser, but as he heads on down the round here, that accolade does not give him any advantages, of course, but we did see Jeff Randall really put in a strong set of performances, battling for top 10 placement in both of the races at Charlotte, and he'll be looking to try and carry that on again today. As we also see a little bit further back there, Ryan Jackson, everybody charging out to circuit at the moment. We do have a grand total of 20 drivers in attendance by the looks of things. I think it's 19 actually on count, but as we see here, Ryan Jackson heading on through, and Jackson, of course, one of those drivers who really had to try and fight his way through the midfield last time out and wasn't quite necessarily able to do it in all the races, but still he'll be looking to try and carry the momentum from where he left off as he heads up towards turn number 7. Now, as a driver, what do you need to be able to do a good qualifying lap here at the Sebring circuit? Well, it is that focus on returning to full throttle and also being able to late brake as much as possible. And I was trying to say brake late there, it seems like the words went the wrong way around, but you get the picture, as the focus here is really on being as aggressive as you possibly can be in carrying that speed from corner to corner. But of course, you need to also be consistent here, because we can see now as we're heading towards the second half of the lap, that road surface now starts to move away from the more commonplace asphalt and starts to transition over into the more sharp concrete slabs by comparison, and that's where the car starts to get bounced around and knocked around a little bit, and it can just start to unsettle you as a driver. But as we do look to what is Ludwig Sauer here at the head of this group of drivers, he makes his way on through with what is there some of his peers behind, and Wade being one of them, as they head up towards the next sequence of corners coming down into Bishop Corner turn number 14, where everybody also trying to get a bit of slipstream off of one another here, because of course racing these low speed formula cars, only 150 horsepower on those engines. It does mean here that you can run a lot closer compared to, say, GT3s or prototype machines that you sometimes see racing around Sebring. Like I say, sometimes it's commonplace every year, particularly with the Sebring 12-hour having occurred as of last weekend. But as we see our drivers heading down the Allman Straight now, a couple going wide there and compromising their run up towards the final corner with some dirt on the tyres. That is going to cost them to a degree. But meanwhile, we look back to Gordon van der Bergen here as he heads into the final corner and gets himself set up with a driver behind and a driver in front. So therefore, he is going to find it a little bit tight here as he comes up third. You'd think at this point, if you were watching this without qualifying being at the top of your screen, that you're watching a race right now. No, they're in qualifying, but everybody wants to stay close to one another in order to try and get enough slipstream to gain them a couple attempts over the lap. Because again, that gain on the straight, whilst it's offset to a degree by the fact you have that dirty air under braking and rotation into corners, most of the drivers feel that having that straight line speed gain is able to offset any time you lose on corner entry. Indeed, the way you can offset that corner entry change is just by simply braking a little bit earlier and getting the nose in earlier, and you'll carry the speed naturally. But as we see Nathan Wade going a little bit wide there, coming out of turn number 16, not happy with himself there, picking up a bit of dirt on the tyres and doing some shaking from side to side in order to get some heat in the compound. Well, the track surface temperature will come up quite aggressively here. We've got brilliant sunshine as well, and as Wade heads on through, we will ride on board after our drivers have cleared their first flying lap 6. They're still trying to get tyre temperature, so the laps are not going to be truly indicative. It's normally the second flying lap, but we bring up on the right hand side of your screen the weather currently, and you can see we have a very low amount of wind today, but it's clear skies with very light cloud, 21 degrees track temperature and ambient at 19 degrees centigrade. So the track temperature is already starting to come up from the ambient, and that means that the tyres will start to wearing quite naturally. It's not going to be exceedingly hot here. We're not going to see the track temperature evolve too much up towards 30, but at the same time it'll just be right for our drivers to really push on. But as we do clear the weather from the right hand side of your screen, and we can see up behind it, we do have Smithhouse making his way back out onto circuit after a difficult start to his qualifying session, when in fact that's Smithhurst that he makes his way up towards turn number 5 now. I think he's going to try and get a move on here, and well, we also look back up to the front of the qualifying pack as they are on their first flying laps, and that is David Burns in what I believe is the McLaren inspired livery coloured machine. That's in the orange, black and light blue. Meanwhile in front of him we do have Jeff Randall, who's decided to go as the front of the pack, indeed have no tow available to him, but instead give the tow to anybody who can follow him. As we see running a little bit wide there, one of our drivers just getting it slightly wrong, and I do believe, unless I'm mistaken, that was none other than, well, in fact, we're just trying to get the identity of the driver. That was Remco Plesio, who went a little bit wide out of 16, but meanwhile, Randall decides to back off and burns up the inside here. Well, Burns deciding to go all in. Randall not happy with his lap, and David Burns will be the driver we ride on board with as he takes us around for his second flying lap of the Sebring circuit. So heading to the timeline, of course, this first lap will be an indicator of what's to come, and as he powers his way up towards turn number 1 into 5th gear and getting ready to go down through the speed range, dropping it down to 4th gear as he turns into turn number 1, slides the car in there. As you can see the rear of the car sliding loose, but then catches it on apex and powers up towards turn number 3 through the Kinkatoo, looks to his right for his cone markers and braking at 100 metres, coming all the way down the 2nd gear before turning in, rotating through forward and onto the brakes once again for turn number 5, drops it to 2nd, aggressive entry, just stays clear of the race, curbing on the apex and powering out. Now it's through Big Bend at turn at number 6. So previously his lap was a 2 minute 25.05. He's going to try and beat a 2:24.9 set by Tisa de Jong, and as he heads out towards turn number 7, he gets a brief breather, but now he's going to brake into the hairpin. Braking is what is approximately 160 metres there from corner apex down to 1st gear, 48 miles an hour, 2 wheels onto the dirt there on the apex to try and cut the corner as much as possible. They're allowed to do so as long as they keep 2 tyres in the white line. As he makes his way through Fangio, turns 8 and 9 here, flat out once again as he heads up towards turn number 10 and getting set to go back onto the brakes. Now here it's about direction change, so he heads up to 5th gear before shortly braking all the way down to 2nd gear, 56 miles an hour apex, getting the car over to the apex on turn number 11 and just flying through, balance the throttle back onto full throttle now as he heads out towards turn number 12, and as he heads through the right hand, he brings the car over to left for Tower corner, braking 100 metres from corner apex down to 2nd gear, but immediately back on the throttle as he fills the car hook up towards the apex to carry the speed down towards Bishop's corner at turn 14. Now with the lap 2/3 complete, this is where it gets even more technical. So he goes flat out through 14, doesn't take too much curb, and now just brings the car nicely over to the left hand side to break his way down to 3rd gear for turn 15, catch the car before it slides wide, and as he makes his way through the small left-hander King, he now brakes into Le Mans corner and coming through turn 16, gets a nice early apex, right time the apex curve, but catches the car again. You can see the slides and the minute adjustments he has to make on the steering wheel in order to make sure the car keeps rotating but doesn't over-rotate, and now down the Auckland straight, carrying all the speed up towards the final corner here, and well, Sunset Bend awaits, but the apex is a long way away. The cones on the left hand side just acts as an indicator where the corner starts. In fact, they're giving the toe to Jeff Randall by the looks of things, and Randall coming on through and going purple. Meanwhile, Burns by comparison not improving, but Randall goes deep and he has to stop the car in time or it goes to the wall, and was they make the way out of the final corner. That's a lap on board with Burns, who to be fair pushing it as much as he could, but Randall crosses the line there, and I don't think Burns is going to improve. But meanwhile, Jeff Randall does improve and he goes to a 2:24.740, and I think there, if he hadn't made the slight mistake in the final corner, he would have been even faster. But Remco Platia has gone even faster still. We're 2:24.594. Those lap times are continuing to come on in and come on trickling down as we still got half the qualifying session left to go. And as Plaisir makes his way up towards turn 3 this time, we've got the double draft to his peers ahead, and that's going to benefit him considering particularly being stuck in the toe of Chris Wayne in the 69 machine, and then in front we can't quite see who that is. It's the other RT racing machine, I do believe, but we can see there Stefan Herman has gone even faster at the top of the board at 2:24.421, and well, we can see the gap standing at 1.5 tenths, if not a little bit more, and with plenty of drives yet to get a time on the board, including what is, I believe, Rasmus Vuori, who's just gone P3 as he's crossed the timeline, and we can also see Rodriguez there P5. Well, plenty more assailants to try and get into the mix, but it is very close at the moment to be on that front row. Indeed, Plaisir with only a 1.3 tenth advantage over Vuori. You imagine that could swing either way within the next couple of laps, but meanwhile, just to be inside the top 10 on that 5th row, we've got Von den Bergen there, Von den Bergen we should say, on what is a 2:25.39, and then only what is there 100ths behind. It is Rodi van der Meijden, and the gap between the two could not be closer, as we can see at the top 10 separated by just under 1 second, which is exactly what we want to see. But at the same time, for our drivers, that's not what they want to see, because that means they cannot become complacent at any point. As we've got a 3-wide run here down through Bishop, and where it looks as though there's a little bit of exchange here between the Von den Bergen and Chris Wayne as they make the way in towards turn number 15. As they come on through here, the driver trying to figure out who's going to be in that pecking order, and nobody wants to be really right now compromised on laps because they're running out of time. And we say that as if 6 minutes or less than 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes isn't a much time when you consider the lap time round is just under 2.5 minutes. That means they have effectively only got 3 laps remaining, including the one they're currently on. But as we look a little bit further down the order, we can see Daniel Tufts currently P16, the lowest placed driver who has set a lap. We've still got 5 drivers to set a lap time, including with Kevin Budgen, Paul Smithhurst, was a JT Corbinen, Jack Atkinson and Nigel Easy, and I think all of them have been out there trying to set laps. It just has not quite worked out for them, as meanwhile Jeff Randall improves to P3 and was a 2:24.733, and that puts him 3 tenths off the overall pole lap. And meanwhile Rasmus Vuori only was 3,000ths off as Tufts comes across the timeline here. Does he improve? He moves up to P13 with 2:25.431, and well, that lap time is still there, and the lap is really coming to life now in terms of how much they can push. With 5 minutes remaining now, we're really going to see our drivers trying to push for those low 24s, and everybody wants to be in the 24s as the minimum, as Rodi van der Meijden there goes provisional pole on a 2:24.410, and by the looks of things, he's just done that lap without any slipstream being afforded to him. And if so, if Van der Meijden can find some slipstream towards the end of the lap and gain down the Ulmer straight, he may be able to put it to a 2:24.2, and that would give him a huge advantage. But I say that, Rasmus Vuori goes for a 2:24.302, and we're almost at the 24.2s now, with the Finn charging on. As he comes through turn number 1 here, well, still plenty of time to go for him to hold on to the front spot of the grid, or at least onto that front row. But for other drivers, they are running out by comparison with that pressure building. And meanwhile, one driver's a bit further down and not quite able to match up to his pace compared to how it was at Charlotte Roval. We see Paolo Anzioso here still trying to find a bit more time on the lap. But then again, I say that when he's 1.2.5 seconds off of what is there the pole lap, and when you do have separating the top 13 less than a second, well, right now it really is nip and tuck. Anybody could be inside the top 10, anybody could be within the front 3 rows of the grid, and that means here we are definitely in for a treat when we go racing, because qualifying is just one part. If you have a bad start in this race, you could see yourself falling a long way down the order, and that means for the Altar Motorsport driver here of Anzioso, he doesn't have to think that it's all over if he doesn't nail it in qualifying. There's still plenty of time out there when he goes racing to be able to try and deliver the laps first and foremost. But meanwhile, as we look to Nigel Easy, meanwhile currently 5.2 seconds off the pole lap, but still I think trying to get himself up to pace it, but he's not got long. running the Golf Racing livery machine there. Lovely colours, of course, indeed a throwback to liveries of old time. You will remember, of course, in the classic Group C Porsche machines that are running liveries like that in a long time ago, but still we do have fond memories of them. And as he heads on down here in the number 65 car, easy, just gradually bringing himself into the qualifying, seeing what lap time he can still deliver out there. But meanwhile, one driver who is improving quite massively is Jack Atkinson, P11 currently, but as he crosses the time lane, goes from 7 tenths down to what is 3 tenths off of the pole lap. It's a 2:24.611. Atkinson really finding his feet here, and well, it should be no surprise, this man, a dedicated driver of Formula Machines on iRacing. I've had the pleasure of watching him race in all his Formula 4s in the past. And I can tell you one thing, he is bringing his craft from Formula 4s to the Skip Barber Formula 2000, and he is making it work. But meanwhile, at the very top of the standings, it is now Herman who has taken pole position at 2:24.061. Are we going to see anybody here at 2:23 at this rate? As Vuori, meanwhile, 2.5 tenths off at the moment, does not improve that time around, I don't think, although I said that, and he does. He goes to a 2:23.991. The lap is continuing to come on down. The circuit is wearing in, and for Vuori now, he's the first to break the 2:23 barrier. But the question is, who else will follow on through? Well, I think Jeff Randall at the moment is on a flyer as well, as he drives up behind what is there, Burns, and these two have been exchanging places between one another on the circuit. I think they're trying to work together as they make the way on through, and as he comes charging up towards what is turn number 13, well, with them working together, I think they're both trying to get a bit of time. It's almost as if the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and in this case, well, they want to be friends in terms of where they place on the rows of the grid, but then there'll be enemies going into turn number 1. But as they come on down here and head up towards what is turn number 15, of course, now for Randall, he's lost out a little bit in the last couple of subsectors. Meanwhile, Jack Atkinson has just gone purple in subsector 3. He's finding more time out there. Could Atkinson potentially storm to the top? Well, we do see that Rasmus Vuori is into the pit lane. I think Vuori thinks he's got it done here, and meanwhile, with just less than a minute to go, can anybody else find the time? We do look to Randall and Burns. They are both on improving laps. Randall's gone the fastest of everybody in subsector 2. Burns no fastest sectors, but here you can see Burns is going to, I think, be lifting off into the final corner. Randall's gone purple in the penultimate subsector. He comes through, and this time he looks to hook up the final corner. You can see the car bounce in there as he comes on through Sunset Bend, but is it enough as he carries all the speed to the tyre barrier? As he heads to the time lane, he's currently P87 7.5 tenths off a pole. What will this be as he comes on through? It's going to be pole position there for Jeff Randall at 2:23.629. My goodness. And you can tell he's happy with that. That's shaking the front of the car, but carrying too much speed and a big whack to the tyre pad. David Burns, meanwhile, goes up to P6. And we've got more times coming in here as the clock's about to strike 15 minutes. Atkinson up to P4. And as the checker flag comes out, qualifying immediately finishes. It's Randall on pole for today's sprint. So as we transition over to the grid procedure, then how do they line up for our first race of the day? Well, it is Jeff Randall on pole for Gone Skipping Racing, joined on the front row by Rasmus Vuori, who starts P2. Stefan Herman and Jack Atkinson, the two privateers, make up your second row, with Rody van der Meyden in P5, joined by David Burns, the STM Racing driver, putting in a good qualifying session, no doubt about it. Ludwig Sau there, P7, joined on the fourth row by Firebird Sim Racing's Johan Rodriguez, and then we have Renko Placia for RT Racing, joined on the fifth row by Sickhead Racing's Gordon van der Bergen. Then we can see behind on the sixth row of the grid, it's Mark Beckhouse of Speed World Academy, joined by Titus de Jong for RT Racing. And then on the seventh row of the grid, it is the pairing of what is Daniel Tufts and JT Kopinen, with Chris Wayne from Gone Skipping Racing starting off our eighth row in P15, joined by Ryan Jackson, the privateer. On row number 9, it is Paolo Anzioso for Artel Motorsport Blue, joined by the privateer of Nathan Wade. And then on the 10th row of the grid, to complete the top 20, it's Nigel Easy and Paul Smithhurst. And then starting P21 for Skips Racing, it is there Kevin Budgeon, who'll be starting from the back of the field and looking to try and carve his way through as soon as possible. Whereas our drivers get ready to go racing, we see we've only got a couple more to go through the gridding process, ladies and gentlemen. And whilst we do wait, we'd just like to take a quick moment to tell you that this series, of course, sponsored by Musical Money, and Musical Money is the quick, easy and safe way to turn your musical equipment into money. And go to musical-money.co.uk to find out more. But right now it'll be to the tune of Racing We Go, and we await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 3 of the 2023 Championship as Jeff Randall gets a good start and brings the car to the inside wall immediately. You see everybody trying to nip and tuck into the slipstream, but as they make their way down towards turn number 1, well, Rasmus Vuori there defending on the inside with Herman trying to go round the outside as they head on through, but it looks as though here as Vuori defends, he's going to the inside line up towards turn number 3. Everybody seems to have made it through the opening corners. I think Titus de Jong has been involved in an instant. We've got 2 drives round in the rear of the picture. We'll try and understand what exactly happened there very shortly, but as they make the way up towards turn at number 5, we've already been the maiden, meanwhile holding on to P5, but under pressure there from David Burns behind as they make the way up through Big Ben now and down towards turn number 7. But we can see Jon Rodriguez there also trying to win the offensive versus Ludwig Sauer. They battle for P7, but already the top 8 making their way away from the rest of the pack, and you see a gap opening to Gordon von der Bergen in P9, but onto the brakes they go, and with cold brakes here and cold tyres as well, everybody right now be itching to try and make a bit of progress. So we see Kevin Budgen has already gained 4 places since the start from P21 to P17 and making the move there on JT Kopinen as he heads up towards the next corner complex. But meanwhile we look from there back up to the front of the field, and we can see here Randall under pressure still as he heads into the right-hand return number 10, coming on through and down towards Collier corner turn 11 and making his way through the left-hander here. Well, they'll just simply go one by one at this brief moment as we hear that Nathan Wade has lost out to Anziosa, and Rodriguez behind still battling with Ludwig Sauer, and Sauer there looking to try and hold on as meanwhile Von der Bergen goes up the inside. He goes all in there as Von der Bergen, and meanwhile Daniel Tufts tucks in behind as meanwhile at the front of the picture we can see Randall versus Herman. Herman going around the outside of 14. This will set him up to the inside into turn number 15. Can Herman commit all the way? I think he can as he goes onto the brakes here and he looks to get it done. Meanwhile further back we can see Ludwig Sauer here still looking for the move on Von der Bergen as there's contact between the two of them and they go round. Von der Bergen does, Sauer carries on and Rodriguez misses it just by a hair's whip there as they make the way through 15 into 16, but it's a disaster for Von der Bergen, and now as they make the way on through, Wolf Halianzo has also been involved, and meanwhile we look back to the front of the field as Jeff Randall defends on the inside with the toe. He's taken the lead back, but as they head into the final quarter for the first time of asking, you can see Herman looking to try and come back by a cutback as they make the way out Sunset Bend and towards the timing line. Randall there going deep, and it will mean that Atkinson also comes on through with Stefan Herman, but Herman here takes the lead this race as they make the way into lap number 2. Well, here's how they stand currently. It's Herman ahead of Atkinson, followed by Randall, but as they make the way down, screw the fall for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. It's 4 wide into turn 1, and as they come through the left-hander here, it looks as though Vuori trying to cut back on all 3. Randall there on the middle and trying to cover off Atkinson, and as they make the way out, Herman holds on, but goodness me, for a brief moment I was wondering which way that was going to go, but as they make the way into turn number 3, we unscrew the fall from only moments to go. It turns out the order stands at Jeff Randall in a side-by-side battle with Van der Meerden as Van der Meerden has closed up and gained on Randall and Atkinson with their 4 wide moment with their peers in front into turn 1, and right now we can see Van der Meerden, Rody Van der Meerden gaining massively as he heads down towards turn at number 7 once more. But as they head up towards the braking zone here, it is close. And right now we have 7 drivers who are all in contention for the win as they head on to the anchors here. And well, who's going to be looking for the move? Nobody at the moment. But meanwhile, further back, we can see Von den Bergen trying to gain ground, looking up the inside there of Kopinen, getting the move done for where's P14, and now chasing after Budgen for P13. And well, he's going to have to make ground and make it soon. He hasn't got all the time in the world as they make the way out of turn 7 up towards 8, 9 and 10 they go, but as they charge the way up here, meanwhile Ludwig Sauer just tucked in behind Kopinen right now and looking to try and make another move here on the 7 at 1. 9 driver is the number 8 car. There's a lock up there for Nigel Easy, catches the car just in time, but that could have been Curtis for him, but he brings it back together. But meanwhile Kevin Budgen has lost out in the run through 10 into 11 and has tucked in behind Kopinen in return as they make the way into turn number 13, and Ludwig Sauer just watching on as meanwhile we look from them back up to David Burns, who's running in at P6 currently as we ride on board here with the privateer from Scotland. Well, on the one hand he's chasing Atkinson down, on the other he's got Rodriguez right behind him, and here is a game of patience where he's got to pick the right time to try and go on the offensive to gain and not lose out at all. But as he comes through 14 there, 15 we should say, takes a little bit too much onto the apex, and as he heads on down towards turn number 17 we get our corner numbers completely mixed up. That was turn 16 back there at Le Mans, but right now focused up to turn 17 at Sunset Bend, powering his way on down the Allman Straight here, and you can see the gap that's opened up. Rodriguez just behind at this point in time and not really gaining either, but meanwhile defending on the inside that's Van der Meerden as they head on through the right hand. In fact that's not Van der Meerden, that is, I do believe, what is it the driver of? We'll try and stand up. I think that is Jeff Randall covering off as Atkinson comes on through, and Rodriguez makes his way up past David Burns as they make the way up towards turn number 1 now, and more quick exchange of places there, but still plenty more to come as they make the way into turn number 1 once more. But meanwhile, in the rear of the picture, we do see Gordon von der Bergen looking to battle hard here with Kevin Budgen on the inside, and meanwhile going even further to the inside here, it's Capina. It's going to be 3-1 into turn 1. Capina tries to make it a 2-for-1 pass. Von der Bergen goes around the outside, clears Budgen, and Capina now looks for the move to be completed versus Budgen as they make their way down towards turn number 3. Behind them they do have what is now, I do believe, a Ludwig Sauer, and as Sauer tries to get involved as well, it's too wide in between Capina and Budgen. It's going to be Capina on the inside as contact. Budgen's given a bit of an elbow out to the outside, and as they make their way down through turn 6 and into 7 here, well, it's going to be flat out racing. Man, Ludwig Sauer says, well, now it's my turn to try and gain the place, and Kevin Budgen being knocked about left, right, instead of being bullied around here by his peers. They make their way up towards turn 7. I think you have an ace up his sleeve as he covers off Sauer there and looks at a return on Capina. We can't quite find the move as he locks up on the brake in there, but manages to stop the car just in time. But Ludwig Sauer definitely now trying to bait out a potential opportunity as they head up towards turn number 10. But as they power on through and head up towards the next corner, the heavy right-hander, we can see these 3 drivers not giving in an inch, and Capina here, we may be making his debut today, but he's definitely making himself felt in the midfield as we can see. Pushing up the inside, and Capina not able to respond to that. Budgen getting the run under braking, nicely said and done there. And Capina will be looking to try and get the run down Ullman to make the return. They're coming through turn 11 into 12 and 13. You see the car sliding through there. Have to be careful, of course, not to go too deep as they make the way on in. But meanwhile, we've got Chris Wayne who's just taken the tour off circuit at turn 13, and the Skipping Racing drivers have re-emerged from Tower Quarter back onto the circuit. But meanwhile, the head of the group that he's just lost out on, it's Nathan Wade in P8, and right now he's under pressure from Tufts with Jackson just behind us. The number 15 driver here continues to put a bit of a cork in the bottle, as they say, in the fact that right now he's causing the top 7 to break away. The gap is 4 seconds to the top 7 right now, and Wade finding himself in effect in the battle for the lower class win, if you will, if you were to break the field up into classes right now. Of course, they're not in separate driver classes, they're all one class. We see a shake of the nose there from what I believe is Kevin Budgen going wide at a turn number 60. He's losing out to both Sal and also Capina as they continue to battle further back. But we look here to Jackson looking up the inside of Tufts. Tufts has to go a little bit deep into the final corner, but as they come on through, he catches the car, but Jackson is going to have to run on the inside. But Tufts will of course have the overspeed on quarter exit here. It's all going to be out positioning into the next corner, and as they make the way on down, well, meanwhile we look to the front of the field for a brief moment. That's Herman and Vuori, and meanwhile Van der Maiden and Rodriguez together, and then Jackson trying to push on through here, and he gets ahead of Tufts. Tufts is not able to come back, and further back still, Ludwig Sauer here battling on the inside of Capina for P14. I think we've got a real rivalry building between these two. Capina right now losing out on the run on the entry into turn 1, but of course he will have the cutback line up towards turn number 3. But as we look from there back up to the race leaders there, battles of sides for a brief moment. Well, Stefan Herman right now, the privateer, keeping Rasmus Vuori at bay, but for how long will it be before another opportunity comes his way? Because it does look as though right now Vuori is playing the game of let's work together to break away, and well, when they're battling behind like this, you can understand why. Johan Rodriguez up the inside for Firebird Sim Racers. The God-skipping racing drive there. Randall doesn't contest it too hard. I think Randall figured about the bigger picture here, but as they make the way up towards turn number 10 here through the Fangio complex, you can see how a 1.5 second gap has opened up between the top 2 and the rest of the field, and this is where the top 2 are not battling. I think Vuori is really playing into that patience game, and he'll look to go on the offensive in the final 5 minutes because they can get that gap up to about 4 seconds, and then that way they've got at least a lap where they can battle without being interrupted by the cars behind. Given the fact that battling costs so much time, we saw that at Charlotte and we're seeing it again here. You battle into a couple of corners and you lose half a second as a minimum. But as we look back from the gearbox here of Johan Rodriguez, we can see the Spaniard here being chased by the Briton Oliver Randall, and Randall right now definitely holding nothing back in the 107 car as he heads up towards turn number 15. But flat out they rise in, no will ray through at the moment as they head in towards the right-hander coming through Bishop as it gets very close. It almost takes the camera off the rear of the car, but Randall, they're making sure not to take away the photography equipment instead as they make the way into the bottom corner. You can see Randall had to turn in earlier, that dirty edge just taking the edge off the nose of the car, but he carries all the speed he can, 2/10 of the gap as they power their way down Ullman, heading up into top gear, of course building the speed gradually, but the toe helps, and as they get ready to go into the final corner, it's going to be Randall on the left, it's going to be Rodriguez on the right, and they battle side by side. And I think Randall here will have the overlap, but meanwhile, we see Rodriguez cuts back to the inside, further back Nathan Wade. Well, Wade here being passed by Ryan Jackson on the inside of the Shell V-Power machine, and the privateer of Wade right now got the pressure of Tufts behind, as we see Beckhouse trying to get back into this fight, and Beckhouse, after a strong practice session, not quite on the pace of the top guys at the moment, but still well in the fight. But we must look back here to Randall versus Brendan Maiden, and also Rodriguez. It's free wide into turn number 1, albeit Rodriguez is slightly off camera on the left, and as they cover through, Randall covers off the inside. Brendan Maiden goes a little bit deep. Rodriguez comes on through. Atkinson as well gets into the fight from behind Burns as they make their way 2 by 2 into turn number 3. And will it be a two-way pass here for Rodriguez? He looks on the inside into 3, but he takes too much curve, then has to back the car as Randall drops it off of 4. And as they make their way through turn number 5, that's the point of the high curves, and you can see just how much speed it takes out of the car when they have to settle it down. But right now, Randall definitely sticking in and saying, no, I'm not losing out. But the gap to Vuori and Herman is now 3 seconds. The top two continue to break away, but it looks so here the battle for P3 is taking precedent as they make the way into the hairpin. Rodriguez is as close as he's going to be, but he can't find a way on through at this time, instead having to wait his turn at once again. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, we still have the pack from P9 to P12 of Wade, Tufts, Beckhouse and Wayne all battling hard here as they make the way up towards turn at number 10. And well, we have got packs of drivers battling left, right and centre. It's a wonder to see. And even further back, we've got Kabinen still battling here with Ludwig Sauer. These two just cannot stop. It's almost as if they're magnetised together here to battle one another, but we love it. And as they break the way down into turn number 10, it's Sauer on the inside there. Meanwhile, Kevin Budgeon making the ground on Nigel Easy slightly at the rear of the camera as they came out of Fangio, and as they head up towards turn number 13, well, Kabinen meanwhile still battling side by side here with Sauer, but Sauer defends the inside into turn number 13. He's going to get the move done here as Kabinen has to slightly lift off there in order to not tap the rear of his rival, but as they come on through it here towards Bishop Corner, well, right now the Finn, I think, absolutely reveling in this battle with Sauer, giving it no quarter as they head up towards turn number 15, but Kabinen's going to carry all this speed through. They slide the way in, but as they come on through the right-hander, well, both drivers they're still side by side, and we can tell that there's also a major event that's happened further up. We've heard that Tufts has fallen down the order, and also we've got a few exchanges. We will take a look back at that, but Kabinen and Sauer are still side by side as they come out of turn 16. They may be battling for only P13, but for them this is the equivalent of a win right now as they make the way up towards turn number 17, powering the way on down. It's going to be Kabinen on the inside, Sauer on the outside, and who's going to emerge from Sunset Bend the victor this time around? Well, Kabinen holds true on the inside, but meanwhile Sauer carries all the speed he dares round the outside, but he goes a little bit deep, and in the end the car just gets caught out, and Kabinen finally takes the place. Meanwhile, we look back up here to P3, and it's Joan Rodriguez who's in the aforementioned position, but not for long, as now Atkinson pounces on the inside. Coming on down towards turn number 3, into left-hander, they go all on the brakes. It gets very close, and Rodriguez, I think, almost losing the nose of the car there, at least shaving off about a millimetre of it as they made their way under braking through 3, and Atkinson gets the return move done, but as they make their way up towards turn 7 now, you can see how close they are together, and well, Daniel Tufts is falling out of the battle inside the top 10, but meanwhile, at the very front of the field, Vuori's decided to go for it with a 4-second gap to the guys behind. I think the Finns decide the time is now to strike, and Herman, by comparison, are leaving at the door open now. I think wise to the fact that whilst Vuori may get ahead now, he can still stay with him all the way for the remainder of this race and look for the counter-attack on the final lap if he so chooses. But as they make their way up towards turn number 10, now Rasmus Vuori will be thinking, right, I've got to go for it here. I've got the lead position, and now I need to push on. But can he find the time that he needs to be able to achieve that? Well, whilst we do have a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look back at what exactly happened to, firstly, Jeff Randall when we were on the previous lap. This was on lap number 5, and Randall getting it wrong there at turn 15. The car sliding away, and into 16 he went. And then only moments later, well, Daniel Tufts involved in a major smash coming through turn 15, and we take a look back at what happened to Daniel Tufts. Now, this was in the battle for P8, and as he came on through the right-hander of 15, I think the rear of the car is going to slide loose. Indeed, the rear left tyre from the driver's perspective gets trapped on the exit curve. It dips, and then the car goes round. And for Tufts, it's all in tears. But as we return to the live racing now, ladies and gentlemen, we see the battle for the lead continuing as Rasmus Vuori here continues to make his way as the front man down towards Sunset Bend. 2 tenths is the gap here, but you can see how Herman continues to close as they power the way on down, and no delta between them, no difference between them, as meanwhile Jack Atkinson a further 4.5 seconds back as Rodriguez Rodriguez up his inside again, but this time Rodriguez not able to make the pounce count, as we can also see Jeff Randall trying to make it a 2-for-1 special, but as they come on through, Rodriguez in fact does get done as Atkinson has to back off, and Randall comes on through as well ahead of Van der Meyden and Burns, but as they head down towards turn 1 this time, it's going to be 2 wide at the front of the group, but then we'll see Randall trying to make it 3 wide here, as he puts the car well on the inside, he gets the double draft, onto the brakes he goes, and as they come through, Randall will make it count, and Rodriguez and Atkinson so busy fighting, but Randall goes deep, and as he catches the car, it's going to be 2 wide again, but this time Randall now losing out, and Atkinson retakes P3, with Rodriguez having to cover off P4 versus Randall. I mean, Roddy Van der Meyden looking up the inside there, but quite can't carry the momentum up towards turn number 5 in order to get done for P5. As they power their way out of the left-hander and down for the right-hander of Big Ben. We can see behind David Burns also staying close. They make the way up towards turn number 7, and as they charge the way on down here, well, the change will be for both Van der Meyden and also Burns is how can they fit themselves into this battle, and I think the question is right now, you just got to get stuck in and hope for the best and try to time it right, as we see Jackson meanwhile battling with Wade for P8, as Jackson looking up the inside there in the yellow-white livery machine, and meanwhile Mark Beckhouse I think starting to get a little bit frustrated there. You can see the body language of the car, the Speedworld Academy driver just wanting to get on through, and I think feeling as though he's having to spend too long caught up in this battle, but meanwhile looking a bit up ahead, oh goodness me, it's Atkinson who's gone around as he gets himself off circuit as soon as possible, but what exactly has happened to the Englishman we'll find out very shortly, but that's not anything we want to say. Atkinson's car is crumpled at the front, it's crumpled at the rear, and well, something has gone very wrong indeed, but we do take a look back at exactly what happened with a replay. So making his way up towards turn number 10 out of Fangio, he went on to the brakes here, and as he came on in, contact there with Rodriguez and Atkinson the end going around. You can see the front left tyre in particular with that moment just slightly crunching in on the suspension, and well, I think for Atkinson it is going to be a tour to the pits, unfortunate for him, but as we do look back to live pictures currently in P12, and meanwhile we look back up to your race leaders here, ladies and gentlemen, with just over 3 minutes to go. They'll have the next lap and then one more after, so 2 laps remaining when they come around this time, and Rasmus Vuori leading up by 2 tenths here as he heads towards the timeline in the 24 car, definitely trying to make amends for losing out the win of the sprint at Charlotte last week, and here he's got his destiny in his hands so long as he can keep Herman behind for 2 more runs of the Sebring circuit. Meanwhile, further behind we can tell you that Randall's still under pressure from Rodriguez and also Van der Meyden as they make the way up towards turn 1, and you can see this battle for P3 through to P6 intensifying, and then you have the battle for P7 between Wade, Jackson, Beckhouse, Van der Bergen, and also Wayne with Atkinson in tow, as Wade there goes round the outside to cover off Jackson and Beckhouse. Meanwhile, Beckhouse up the inside, he's going to try and carry all the speed he can. The number 11 driver here has been waiting for so long to gain a place on either Jackson or Wade. He goes on the inside here, but Jackson sees it's coming, he goes deep on the outside, covers the inside of 4. Beckhouse is not going to move, he's as stubborn as a mule, and who can blame him as they make the way out of turn number 5 and power their way out there 2 wide as they come through Big Bend, and as they make the way down towards turn 7, Beckhouse will find himself on the outside. Look at Wayne, however, Wayne trying to get into this fight as well and keeping the inside line there. I think it's going to be 3 wide as they make the way down. Wayne on the left of your picture, meanwhile Jackson backing out there, or does he? No, Jackson holds true, and meanwhile we can see Beckhouse on the outside losing out versus Wayne as Wayne gets the move done on the inside, but Beckhouse comes back as they emerge, heading up through turn number 8 shortly and into the Fangio sequence now. Will Beckhouse find himself side by side with Wayne, and this is not what he wanted. He wanted the move to be done, but instead now he's having to battle backwards with Wayne as they head up towards turn number 10. Onto the brakes they go. They've got Gordon van den Bergen just behind, watching on as Beckhouse tries to go all the way around the outside to set up the inside for turn number 11. I think he may have done it here. His door number's 11 at turn 11. He'll rise once more as he makes his way through and up towards Tower Corner. And you can see now Wayne losing out versus van den Bergen, and Beckhouse has got it done. A small tap there to the rear. I do believe that from was van den Bergen onto Beckhouse, although the camera may be deceiving, but we can see van den Bergen going deep, but he covers off Wayne, and now Beckhouse up into P9. But as they head up towards Bishop Corner and through, meanwhile we do look from them back to Ludwigshafen, who finds himself now chasing after with Kevin Butchen in front, and in return and behind he does have it Titus de Jong, as you can see at the driving the 90 car behind in the green livery machine, the RT racing machine, trying to make some ground after a difficult start to his race, but Sau having cleared off and broken a little bit further up the road, but Corbinen even further up to P13. They separated one another for now, but meanwhile, speaking of inseparable, we look out into the Allman Straight and head into Sunset Bend, and Johan Rodriguez here battling still with Randall as Randall goes a bit deep, and then the maiden comes up through on the inside, but can he find it here as they make their way into the final lap? The white flag waves. We can see in the distance Vuori versus Herman, and Vuori is leading this race as we look to making the way into turn number 1, and the privateer holding on for now. But then meanwhile, Randall trying to come back for P3 here versus Rodriguez, but Rodriguez is going to make that Formula machine as wide as humanly possible. As meanwhile, we see Van der Maiden looking up the inside there of Burns. He gets the move covered off for P5, but as they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 3, meanwhile, we do look from them to a bit further back, and you can see here Vandenbergen battling with Jack Atkinson as Atkinson up the inside in a heavily damaged car. It's sliding all over the place under braking, but he just about gets it done. And then we have Ludwig Sauer here battling hard with what is Kevin Budgen up the inside. It's Sauer there on the right of the picture. Budgen goes deep, locks up the brakes, but he gets it stopped in time. But as they make their way through turn 3, we'll have a brief breather before we start to see the battles again. And in particular, we look back to your leaders here, Rasmus Vuori versus Stefan Herman, as they make the way up towards now turn number 10. Via Fangio they go, and nothing between them. But the problem is Stefan Herman's just not got enough to be able to make the move. Or has he? Has he been waiting? Is he going to literally save it to the final corner and just make Vuori think that he's not got enough huff and puff in the car? Well, if he is doing that, he is playing a risky game here because he's been behind Vuori for so long. But to be fair, if he thinks he can get this done, well, I think now he's started to bury his fangs as Vuori. They're going slightly defensive into turn 13, just coming off the inside for the King of 12. But as they make their way out to Tower Corner and down through Bishop, will Vuori not being really harassed at the moment into turn 15. That gap 3/10, it is gradually closing, but it won't be enough to cause him to have to worry about his rearview mirror, if you will. But as they make their way up towards the right hand of 15, we can see the drivers here absolutely nose to tail, and we're going to stay with them all the way to the end as they come into Le Mans corner, and it's all about nailing these apexes now. 2 critical apexes. Vuori nails one of them. A little bit of a glide there, a small bit of dirt on the rear left tyre. What will that do to the car? Well, it's going to cost him a little bit of traction on corner exit, and you can see Herman looking to go for the move, but he's forced to go to the outside. Vuori covers him off on the inside immediately knowing, but Herman's got a nose ahead here. He's gaining fast, but it's going to be to Sunset Bend, and Vuori's not going to back out. He'll go all in on the brakes, and Herman tries to take it all the way around the outside. I think he may get it done as he just reaches the apex. He gets it stopped in time, and Stefan Herman emerges from the final corner. The checker flag awaits him, and he's done it. He's taken the lead on the final lap, and he heads to line, and it's a win for Stefan Herman over Rasmus Vuori by the smallest of margins. Roman Rodriguez will come on through to take P3 just behind, ahead of Jeff Randall, David Burns, and Brody Van der Maiden, and then it will be in P7. It will be Nathan Wade just ahead of Ryan Jackson, with Mark Beckhouse behind them, and then Jack Atkinson comes on through to P10 ahead of Chris Wayne, who comes home best of the rest, and it's Gordon van der Bergen at P12 ahead of JT Coppinan, who holds off Kevin Budgen, Ludwig Sauer and teases de Jong to the line, and it'll be Paolo Anzioso who finishes P17 ahead of Nigel Easy. As you can see there, the Italian, I think, shaking from side to side, thinking where did it go wrong and how can he get close to the battles next time. Nigel Easy P18. We still got a couple more drivers to come on through before this race is done, including Remco Plessia, who's making his way on through to the checker flag. He has got Paul Smithers right behind him, but I think he's done enough here to hold on to P19 and Smithers P20, and then the last of our drivers to come to line after battling for so long to be inside the top 10, but an instant at turn 14 cost him dear. It will be Daniel Tufts who completes our finish in order. 21 started, 21 finished, all in the lead lap, which is what we love to see. What a brilliant race, and we'll have a 5-minute breather before we go to the next one. That's a 5-minute breather for our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, because we can't quite go to the feature race without, of course, giving you a reminder of the results from race 1 of today. And this is all the results, subject to any short inquiries. So after 20 minutes of racing action in round 3 of the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, as brought to you on iRacing, sponsored by Musical Money, we can see Stefan Herman taking the win in the end by 2.2 seconds. I do believe that there was an engine failure for Rasmus Vuori just as he reached the line, but he still finished in P2, and he would have been only a couple of attempts behind come the finish. And then behind Vuori, completing the podium, Jorona Rodriguez for Firebird at Sim Racing, battling hard to hold off the combination of Gone Skipping Races, Jeff Randall, the privateer of David Burns, and STN's Rodi van der Maiden. But then in P7, a little bit further behind by 5 seconds, Nathan Wade, who managed to bring it on home ahead of Ryan Jackson, with Mark Beckhouse of Speed World Academy and the privateer Jack Atkinson completing the top 10. Chris Wayne just missing out on the top 10 finish there, best of the rest in P11 by in the end only 5 thousandths on the finish line, and it was Gordon van der Bergen that finished P12 for Sickhead Racing ahead of JT Coppinan on his debut at P13 in brilliant battling with Kevin Budgen and Ludwig Sauer Nassau, who finished behind in P14 and P15. The Skips Racing driver in particular of Budgen, having to come through the field from the back of the pack. From P21 to P14 he went, but didn't rise perhaps as much as his early pace would indicate, but still he's got another race to go. And then we see Titus de Jong P16 for RT Racing, ahead of Artel Motorsport Blues, Paolo Anzioso P17, as we continue down Nigel Easy P18, ahead of Remco Plesier. Paul Smith as P20, completes in the top 20, and then P21 at Daniel Tufts there, with a race that was perhaps not representative in terms of his finishing position. The pace he had, he was battling for a top 10, but a small mistake cost him very dear, but he'll be looking to make amends for that in the next race of the day. But as we wind back up to the top 10, ladies and gentlemen, to confirm, Jack Atkinson will be your reverse grid pole sitter for the purposes of our second race of the day, and well, we are only moments away from going racing once again. And just to remind you, we do have the 40-minute feature race coming up in a couple of minutes. I do believe in what will be 3 minutes' time, if I'm not mistaken. So we're a tiny bit behind schedule, but I don't think you'll mind. And it will be 40 minutes with, of course, that all-important mandatory pit stop. But as our drivers do take the breather and some of them do decide to make their way out onto circuit currently, well, of course, what can we read into after our first race of the day? Well, firstly, the Sebring International Raceway absolutely delivering with its whip, straights and corner sequences to give us brilliant battling from start to finish over the race, but also very interesting. Normally when you find yourself in a pack, you stay in that pack for the remainder of the race, and that was the key thing that Stefan Hermann and Rasmus Vuori really capitalised on. We saw early on in the race that once Vuori had got into the lead, Hermann was with him, or alternatively, when Hermann was leading, Vuori would be with him, but they were never truly battling one another. Instead, they gave themselves the opportunity to run away as a top two and open up a 4 to 5 second gap to the battle for P3 behind. And in doing so, they gave themselves the opportunity to then focus on that battle right on the final lap, and it was Stefan Hermann who showed all the patience in that P2 position and delivered on the run out of Le Mans corner at turn 16, where Vuori dipped a tyre onto the dirt, and that cost him a little bit of traction, and that's all it took for Hermann to try and send it round the outside and get the job done. But of course, Vuori will be looking to bounce back, and with the inversion of the top 10 finishing positions, it will mean that they'll be right in the clutches of everybody who'll be salivating to battle their way into the top 10. And meanwhile, for drivers like Ryan Jackson, having finished quite far down inside the top 10, they'll be right up towards the front, and it'll be an opportunity for them to potentially take a win, or at least a podium here in the upcoming feature. I can see a number of you there really enjoying the race, including Ollie Pimley, who says best car to watch for close racing, been great, and 100% agree with you there, Ollie. And Nick VR saying Nathan Wade will win or take someone out in the next heat. That is quite a bold prediction. We'll have to wait to see. Of course, Nathan Wade doing very well in the championship so far, and can he carry on that run of form here today and make it a championship lead that extends into rounds 5 and 6? Well, we're not going to play favourites, but my prediction is if Nathan Wade's up towards the front, he is definitely a firm favourite to be holding on to a podium position come the very end. But let's not count out the likes of Jeff Randall, alternatively Stefan Hermann or Rasmus Vuori, for the simple reason they're all looking fast, and if they don't fall away from the leading pack early on, they may just find themselves right up there at the finish. Plus, you've also got strategy here, and well, will we see drivers potentially take an early pit stop to get themselves out of battling packs and jump ahead of the field? That will be the ultimate change. An undercut here, much like what we saw at Charlotte, could be very effective at enabling you to gain time. As we see Daniel Tufts making his way down Allman here, only 10 seconds to go before we get to the transition over to the feature race, and we are just going to take a quick sip of water. As we do say hello to Renee Ekman there, who's cheering on Mark Beckhouse, saying Beckhouse to go for first. Well, will he be able to pull that off? We'll have to see, as now we transition over to the feature race, and this is how they line up for round number 4. As they make their way to the grid, it is Jack Atkinson on pole, reverse grid pole, joined by Mark Beckhouse of Speedworld Academy. In the second row, we have Ryan Jackson and Nathan Wade, followed up on the third row by Rody van der Meeden and David Burns, the STN driver there, looking to go strong from P5. We then have Gone Skipping Racing's Jeff Randall starting P7, joined by Firebird Sim Racing's Johan Rodriguez on the fourth row, with the fifth row being contested by Rasmus Vuori and Stefan Hermann. We then see Chris Wayne from Gone Skipping Racing starting off our sixth row, joined in P12 there by Gordon van der Berg. Bergen, and the Sickhead Racing driver is followed up on the grid on row number 7 by JT Kopinen, who has Kevin Budgen alongside for Skips Racing, with row 8 going to Ludwig Sau and RT Racing's Titus de Jong. Then on row number 9 it's Paolo Anzioso for Arton Motorsport Blue, joined by Nigel Easy in P18. On row number 10, Remco Plesia and Paul Smithhurst, the RT Racing driver there, looking to battle his way up through the field this time, no question about it. And then Daniel Tufts will be starting last but not least, P21 on the 11th row. Now he's got it all to do from the back of the grid, but will he be able to find his way on through? That will be the challenge that confronts him. Well, as our drivers get themselves set, that is how the grid lines up here then, ladies and gentlemen. And as we look from the blimp camera here, look into how the field all lines up with their colours, it does look as though we are only a couple of drives away from getting the lights out. And we're 40 seconds to go before we do see the lights out on the grid. Place your bets as we look to the front of the field. Will it be Atkinson who leads come the exit of turn number 3, or will it be Mark Beckhouse? I think some of you will be saying it's Beckhouse, others will be saying it's Atkinson. Well, we did see in race number 1 today that starting on pole doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to be leading come the end of turn number 3, but I think for Atkinson, he'll be looking to try and prove that at a drong, as we do now just wait for one more drive. I believe Kopinen to head to the grid, and we have got 10 seconds remaining here. Beckhouse will be looking for the move, but with it being 40 minutes rather than 20 minutes and a pit stop thrown in, could we see a change of tone and a calmer start? Well, let's find out. Well, as the gridding process is complete, we await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for a race number 2 today as Jack Atkinson gets a good start of the line. Beckhouse immediately tucks in, coming off Ryan Jackson and Nathan Wade as they make their way down. Everybody goes line astern initially here, trying to gain a bit of speed before they head up towards turn number 1. But Atkinson peels off to the inside here. Beckhouse looks all the way around the houses as they make their way on through, and as they charge up towards turn number 3, we can see here all of our drivers staying in close contentions. Meanwhile, David Burns and Rodriguez further behind, battling side by side, and we can see Vender Maiden under pressure in P5. They come down to the braking zone, top 4 stay as they are. Meanwhile, 2 by 2, they all come through turn number 3. Rasmus Vuori immediately trying to make ground here versus Jeff Randall, trying to go around the outside of turn at number 5 here versus Randall. And Randall going to try and force the issue all the way up towards turn 7. Off circuit goes Nathan Wade, but as they make the way back onto circuit, we see coming through Big Ben corner, everybody heading down here and everybody surviving the opening few corners as our leaders now head into the braking zone for turn number 7. Jackson looking for the move on Beckhouse there. You can see him peeling out in the yellow and white livery machine, but under braking they go. A few lockups there as everybody comes on through. And further lockups further down the field as Paolo Anzioso under pressure there from Paul Smithhurst. We do have Titus de Jong getting it wrong on the exit of hairpin. We've got a driver off there, and that is in the form of Stefan Herman, who's dropped 2 places at the start. Herman really struggling in the starting procedure of this race compared to the race start, and therefore cost him very dear. But already 2 packs started to form, as we can see there was effectively the battle for P11 up to P1, and it's the battle of P12 down, so it's a lockup for Budgen. And meanwhile, Herman breaking away as we've got a car around there, and that's Kevin Budgen who's gone round at turn number 10. Meanwhile, Paul Smithhurst has come through up to P12 and looking for the move on Herman as they make the way up towards turn number 13. This second pack, where it started to really intensify as they head through the right hand of Rasmus Vuori's just been off circuit a little bit up the road and has dropped down the order to an extent. And in fact, Rasmus Vuori a long way off the side. He's over to the barrier, and the front left is completely gone for the Finn. What on earth has happened there? We'll have to try and find out very shortly. But meanwhile, we look back up to the front of the field, and Jack Atkinson here has made a brilliant start. He's held on to lead, and he's opened up a little bit of a gap to Beckhouse, and this is exactly what he's needed at the start of this race to give himself some breathing room and evolve his way into this race. As we're hearing, there's been a further instant for back for Stefan Herman, and also we are having a couple more place changes. You can see in the rear of the picture there, and in particular that is Jan Rodriguez battling side by side with Gordon van den Bergen as they make the way out towards turn at number 17. But meanwhile, we look back to Beckhouse versus Atkinson, and Beckhouse up the inside into the Sunset Bend, and as they make the way out and towards the end of the opening lap, well, Beckhouse finally finds his way into the top spot. I think Atkinson here playing compliant rather than trying to fight this too hard, for the simple reason they got a long way to go and fuel's going to be critical. So after 1 lap, it's Mark Beckhouse who leads ahead of Atkinson P2, followed by Jackson P3, Wade P4, Vender Maiden P5. Then we have a bit of a gap to David Burns P6, followed by Jeff Randall P7, who is further back there, and you can see 2.5 seconds is the gap. He's battling with Van den Bergen and Jan Rodriguez. They make the way out to turn number 1. Rodriguez looking for the double mover. He gets the move on Van den Bergen, or does this. They make the way out towards turn number 3. Still got to do it side by side here under braking. I think he will get it done with Van den Bergen. Back it off there, a little bit of contact between the two of them, but nothing major as they make the way on through. And then we do have a P10 at Paul Smithhurst, who's gained 10 places since the start of this race. The private from the United Kingdom has made the most places of anybody so far. He's absolutely ripped and teared his way up through the field, and now can he break away from Sauer to move on towards the top 9? Well, Ludwig Sauer, best the rest in P11, would have something to say. Otherwise, he looks around the outside here in the run down through Big Bend up towards Hairpin. But as he's got his nose ahead, Smithhurst is going to defend on the inside. There's no question about it. I think Sauer here is going to be made to go the long way round, as Daniel Tufts as well has gained 10 places now. Tufts following Smithhurst through and starting from the back of the grid. And as they make the way up towards turn number 10, all the free drives here, Tufts does make his way past Sauer, and Sauer losing 2 places for 1 as they headed out of the Hairpin and up towards the next sequence. But coming on free, you can also see there Remco Plessier looking up the inside in the RT racing machine, the green liveried machine, but he's not quite able to make the move stick there or make it happen as they make the way out to 11 and up towards 13. And Smithhurst right now trying to dig in here and trying to find a bit of a foundation for this P10 position. As they make the way through the right-hander at Tower Corner, we look back up to Ryan Jackson, meanwhile, who continues to hold off Nathan Wade. And will Wade here, no stranger to battling Jackson. We saw these two coming to blows in race number 1, albeit no contact between them, but definitely exchanging the places as if it was going out of fashion as they make the way down towards Le Mans Corner here. You can see how these two are trying to size each other up, with Jackson going very wide. He catches it. But in going wide there, he's going to relinquish the position to Wade immediately, as Van der Meyden also trying to close up, but not close enough to do so. As they power the way down the Allman Straight here, Van der Meyden is now going to be close enough to look up the inside into Sunset Bend. And I think here Jackson will just simply let this go. He'll know that he's got a bit of dirt on his tyres. He needs to get the dirt off the tyres, scrub the layer off, and then start to battle once again. They've got over 45 minutes, well not 45 minutes, 35 minutes. I was going to say the race is extended otherwise, as they make the way up towards turn at number 1 once again. They calm down for a brief moment. It's Beckhouse who still leads this race with Jack Atkinson now starting to be attacked a little bit by Wade, as Wade is closing up. And then as we ride on board with Nathan Wade into turn number 1, we can see Beckhouse being given some breathing room, but I think Atkinson is trying to save some fuel early in this race. He's trying to take the pace out of the car, but use the toe of Beckhouse to give himself the opportunity to underfuel a little bit in the pits in terms of the amount of time he'll spend by comparison with his peers. But as they head into turn number 5 here, of course, complacency is not to be found in any of our drivers' minds, for the simple reason, if you spend too long off the pace, somebody behind will look to capitalise, and Nathan Wade definitely now trying to get the move on here after passing Jackson at turn 16, and with Van der Meyden covering him behind, and now he's got the opportunity to push for a P2, but lifting off there before he heads into the braking zone for the turn 7 hairpin. And everybody now starting to end up in that 50-50 mindset. Do they push or do they fuel save to give themselves that strategic advantage? Well, that's the trick here, for the simple reason, if you feel as though you've got the pace, you'll probably try to push on for a couple laps. I think that's what Wade's doing right now. He's looking at where Atkinson is vulnerable, or where he may be fuel saving a little bit in his mind excessively, and thinking, right, that's where I go for the move in the next couple of laps, and then I do the same to Beckhouse. Is Beckhouse running at a pace that feels comfortable to me, or is it the case that I need to get past him and then try and break away or fuel save at the front of the pack? But of course, when you're at the very front, you can't fuel save as much if you don't have the toe of another car, and while the slipstream is small, but it's still going to give you plenty of time in terms of that pit time. But as we jump off of Nathan Wade's car and continue to look to this pack of 6 drivers, extending from Beckhouse down to David Burns in P6, well then we do have Gordon van den Bergen in P7. He has the next trio, including himself and the Sickard Racing driver under pressure on Randall and Rodriguez as they come up towards turn number 15. Coming up through the right-hander and up towards turn 16 they go very shortly. Meanwhile, further back we have got some battling still ongoing between Smithhurst and Ludwig Sauer, with Smithhurst in fact losing 3 places, gone from P10 to P13 in the flash of a few corners, and we'll have to understand what exactly has happened there very shortly. But as they make the way out the Mont corner here, all the drivers staying together. Ludwig Sauer pulling out onto the inside line already, goes early then. I think that's just as much defense as it is offense. He's trying to go on the offensive versus Remco Plessier, but meanwhile covering off Smithhurst at the same time. Smithhurst on the outside here, and you can see side by side with Sauer as they head on down, but Sauer trying to get the overspeed here, as meanwhile Plessier covers off the middle of the road. It's going to be 3 wide on entry. We've got a slide there for Tufts at the front of the group, and Tufts goes straight on. He just catches the car in time, but it was almost a hit with a wall there for Daniel Tufts, but not to be. And as they head across the timeline here, Smithhurst now starting to stalk his prey and gain more, as now it's only Remco Plessier as he looks up the inside. He's going to go for the move here, and Smithhurst may have fallen back, but he's now back on the attack. He goes all in on the inside, up to P10 he goes. He stops it on corner apex there, and Placier just looks at the rear of his car and thinks, how on earth did he get that done? Well, the question is going to be answered by the simple reason: you can never count Smithhurst out as they make the way into turn number 3. But meanwhile, Nigel Easy just behind, getting closer to Paolo Anzioso as they head out to left-hander and into the right-left complex. But whilst we do have a brief breather, ladies and gentlemen, we do need to take a look back at what happened to Kevin Budgeon and Rasmus Vuori on the opening lap. Well, this was in the run in towards turn what was 10, and Budgeon went on a round there. And in fact, I think we need to look to a little bit earlier in the camera footage, and here we go with the roll as Budgeon came down under braking, and I think this may have been a mistake of his own volition. Locks up the front right tyre, and the rear of the car just lets go. But then a little bit later on in the lap, what happened to Rasmus Vuori? Well, he was battling inside the top pack at the time, and as he went into turn 13, onto the brakes, he went in very hot and contacted with the number 9 car. A small tap on the back there from, I think that was Chris Wayne, unless I'm mistaken. And well, for Rasmus Vuori, in the end, it all ended in tears. Just a little bit hot under braking, and then the car sent to the tyre barrier, and that's how it occurred for the two drivers on the opening lap. But as we do look back to the live pictures here, and we look back up to the very front of the field, where it's still Mark Beckhouse who leads this race. But as he heads up towards that turns 15 and 16, we should say, behind Atkinson and Wade staying right there with him. And in fact, as we jump aboard the gearbox here, well, that 4 tenths of a second gap, it doesn't look like much, but it is a long time in this race. It's had 4 tenths, let alone 2. And as they make the way up towards turn number 17, well, right now Beckhouse is being closed up after running wide, and Atkinson here will immediately try and go on the offensive, trying to capitalise here down Allman for the simple reason he'll want the lead position, but no sign of any of these drivers wanting to come into the pits early. And we have had 3 retirements in this race, and those include Rasmus Vuori, Kevin Budgeon and JT Coppino. Coppino not able to take to the grid, unfortunately only able to join us for the sprint race today, but great to see him. We hope to see more of him in future rounds. But meanwhile, Beckhouse now down to P2, but nobody peeling off out of the 18 remaining drivers. Everybody staying out there and trying to deliver on the long-term strategy. But Beckhouse up the inside of Atkinson now. Wade coming on through with him, and Atkinson there having to give the space to 2, not just 1, as he goes a little bit wide. He catches the car, however, as they make the way up towards turn number 3. Wade covers him off, and meanwhile Vendemaiden behind just watches on in P4, and I would imagine if he could fit a bucket of popcorn between his legs and be consuming it as he's racing, we would have got a spectacle there, but he's not allowed to do so. Instead, right now we're enjoying the spectacle, and they're all pushing on as they make the way down through 6 into 7, and David Burns at the back of this group. Meanwhile, I think it's just having to play the ultimate patience game, and Burns, to be fair, I think he's been very tactical about this. I think what he's deciding to do is just simply stand on the back of Jackson doing the same, and then Maiden to an extent as well. I think the 3 at the rear of this 6th set of drivers, they're all thinking about that longer term, just save the fuel, let them fight, and we'll gain later in the race. But in return, of course, if one of them drops off the pace, particularly leader Van der Maiden for any reason, then that could cost them all time in quick succession. But right now they won't be thinking about that. They'll be thinking about just staying with the pack. And then as we look back to Daniel Tufts in P11 at the moment, chasing after Paul Smithhurst there and looking for the move through Fangio up towards Woody's Cunningham corner. You can see Tufts there coming around the outside, looking to the inside, but Smithhurst covers him off. And as they make the way to the braking zone here, Tufts continues to try and just get the door to open a little bit more, but I think they was 50-50 on the brakes and decided against it, not wanting to risk it all so early. But as they come through turn 11 up towards 13, Tufts right now, patience is starting to wear thin. I think he feels he's got the pace to break away from this group as he locks up the front right brake there, really trying to tear to his temper down. But as they make the way up towards turn number 15, the challenge will be here for Tufts. He's got to time this right, and he's got to avoid locking up too much more, otherwise he'll take too much out of the car and he'll lose the pace at the end of the race. And meanwhile, Remco Placier, by comparison, with Placier, Smithhurst and Tufts all gaining 10 places since the start. Well, you can see them, they're all sliding the way through into turn 16, and these 3 all trying to gain further ground. But the Dutchman right now at the head of this pack, just simply sticking it in and saying, right, I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to lose the place here. But Smithhurst in return trying to make that ground. And I think looking up the inside here, down Allman, he'll go in for the move here into turn 17. And will Placier try to cut it back, or will he just simply let it go? I think Placier is just going to simply let it go here, knowing fight is only going to cost them more time if they want to go hunting after the top 8. And already we can tell you that the top 8 is currently almost 10 seconds clear of this battle for P9. That is how fast that top pack are travelling. And as we continue to watch here, the battle for P9 gone. Will Plessis defended to the inside, Smithhurst around the outside and carrying on through. Daniel Tufts meanwhile around the outside, he can't come through, but Plessis tries to come back here into turn number 1, close to the wall, and as they emerge 2 by 2 down towards turn number 3, we can see their Tufts trying to pick the right horse to back, as they say, as they make their way into turn 3, and in the Plessis defends hard here, and he retakes P9. Smithhurst still down the inside to outside, and will we absolutely love to see it here, but surely would these two drivers be better thinking about the fact they've now lost a further second to Rodriguez in P8? Well, I don't think it matters to them. I think they're knee deep in the battle in here, and that's where all their attention is going. But as they come down through Big Bend and out towards the hairpin, you see Smithhurst covered in the inside now. He thinks he's got track position here. Tufts again trying to come through, but look at Ludwig Sau there at the rear, tucking in behind his rival Plessis as they make the way on through the corner, and you see that all giving one over space, all sliding out the corner, oversteer plenty, and behind we've also got Paolo Anzioso and Titus de Jong. They've caught up to this. Nigel Easy as well, it's getting close, and Gordon Vandenbergen is only 2 seconds back, so it is all building up behind them as we see the Italian of Auto Motorsport Blues. Anzioso under pressure from de Jong on the inside, a lock up there for Anzioso, but he just about stops it in time, almost a near miss on the back of de Jong, but they all settle back into formation here as they come up towards Tower Corner once again, and for a brief moment there's calm before another storm. Meanwhile we look up to the very front of the field and we see Mark Beckhouse here making his way into turn 15 into 16, and the Speedway World Academy driver right now, he may be leading this group, but it's only for a temporary basis in terms of it could be only moments away before we see another change for a lead. But as he heads down the Allman Straight, he'll be looking to make it permanent and not temporary by the end. And as he powers through, meanwhile in the rear of the picture we see Jeff Randall there and Jon Rodriguez in the battle for P7, with Randall going a little bit wide. Atkinson meanwhile on the inside here again versus Beckhouse, and Wade just simply staying put this time. Meanwhile Ryan Jackson looking up the inside of Endermaiden and getting the position covered off for P4. And as they emerge out the corner with Beckhouse and Atkinson still too wide of quarter exit. And I think now, with this two-wide situation, Beckhouse will be under pressure from Wade, but as they head on down here, Wade looks to make it 3 wide. Wade on the right, Atkinson in the middle, Beckhouse on the left of your picture. It's 3 into 1 they go, and as they come through the left handle, Nathan Wade takes the lead in this race for the first time today as the number 15 driver charges up towards turn number 3. I am hearing that Titus de Jong has been involved in a bit of an incident towards the end of the last lap, and we've also got Remco Plessis into the pits, but Atkinson returns on the inside versus Wade into turn number 3. But as they come up towards turn number 5 here, well, Wade had a brief moment at the very top of the standings. I think he's liked it. I think he wants to get it again soon. But Atkinson coming back there, and we are starting to see our first pit stops come on in terms of the ones for fuel, and it's Plessis in particular who's taken the pit stop, with de Jong having an incident which has cost him and has made him come into the pits. But as they break the way down here, Ryan Jackson now thinking about the move versus Beckhouse. He goes in on the inside there. Beckhouse gives in the space, but Jackson not quite able to make the attack, and also the run to the apex add up. But instead he costs himself a bit of time as now Vandermeiden looking round the outside all the way through Fangio and up towards the turn 10 they go in towards Cunningham. But the problem here for Jackson is, can he cover off Vandermeiden, or is it better to let it go when the Vandermeiden backs out? Jackson covers the middle of the road, and as they come through the right hander here, David Burns behind, still staying close and heading up towards turn 13, and well, nothing between them all at the moment, and every moment they battle, when it's tight, it's close, and that's what we love to see in the Skip Barber Formula machines as they make the way in towards turn number 13. Meanwhile further back, Ludwig Sau trying to find his way past Paolo Anzioso, and these two gaining places, with of course the pit stop of Remco Plessis and also Titus de Jong having to come into the pit. And speaking of Titus de Jong, we have a brief moment to take a look back at what exactly happened to the RT Racing driver. Well, this was in the run into turn 17 only moments ago, looking on the inside there of corner apex, and as he came on through, I think the car bouncing and collecting almost both of what was Daniel Tufts and his peer around him. Oh, but what was his rival there of, I believe it was Paolo Anzioso, but in the end Titus de Jong survived in that moment, and well, a very near miss with that, but the Dutchman there just being bounced around on the concrete slab on the apex, and that's how easy it is for the car to come unsettled with the road surface changes. But right now, thankfully, no major incident there. It was a near miss for them. But meanwhile, Daniel Tufts at the front of our picture, battling with Paul Smithhurst. Smithhurst on the left of your picture as they head down the Allman Straight. This is in the battle for P9, and well, the privateer Tufts here, I think we're just hoping this time he could go around Sunset Bend without having to take any evasive action or holding his fingers crossed. But as he comes into the right hander, decides to go deep, looks to cut it back on the apex, gets it nicely pinned there to the apex, and a beautiful have thought come back around the outside there of Smithurst, but then coming into the pit, and so does Smithurst. They both decide to come in, and pit stops are plenty now starting to play out, as meanwhile we see Jack Atkinson here, your overall leader, as he makes his way into turn number 5. Will still holding on to the position versus Nathan Wade, with Beckhouse and then Jackson at Vandermaiden and Burns behind the top 6, all staying strong, with then Pearson and Jeff Randall currently 4.5 seconds off of this group, and will Randall and Rodriguez staying together but not really gaining. And I wonder now whether we may see some drivers in this group of 6 decide to start to think about that pit stop and cutting off their opening stint early to give themselves the opportunity to run on clear track and gain lap time. Of course, it is a gamble. If the drivers who do not pit decides to suddenly not fight, then you do lose average lap time because they're running the toe of one another and you are not in clear air. But again, clear air could be the recipe for success. It all depends on the driver. As meanwhile, further back, Ludwig Sauer here in P10 battling with Paolo Anzioso. Anzioso coming off the inside of the turn 7 hairpin as they head up towards turn 10 themselves. You can see Nigel Easy also starting to ease his way into this battle as they make the way up towards turn number 10 as of the braking zone shortly. But as they come on down, Sauer looking for the move here. Anzioso not defending this, and Sauer's going to go all in. It's going to force them backwards towards Easy, with Van den Bergen only 1.5 seconds off. But Sauer there being given the elbow out by Anzioso, but Anzioso in return brings it back to Apex or 11, and Sauer backs off for now as they come through 12 into 13. A little bit of a slide down to braking for Anzioso. That, I think, is the brake bias, and also the rear roll bar just catching him out. But as they make the way up towards Bishop Corner at turn 14, Sauer definitely now starting to go fighting. I think he's due for a pit stop soon and wants to gain one more place before he does it. But as they head up towards turn 15, you can see just behind how Anzioso has got the challenge of Easy also creeping in, and that'll be a fault as well for Nigel Easy. If he sees the two in front not pit at the end of this lap, does he decide to do so the opposite in order to give himself strategic advantage? Well, that's the thing you can do when you're towards the back of a given pack. You can play the strategy game and start to also play the mind games with it. As we see that Anzioso doing a little bit of a bob and weave down the Ulm Street. He'll be allowed one, but he won't be allowed to do that every single time for the simple reason it could be dangerous. But Sauer here looking around the outside, Anzioso covering him off here, and Sauer going all in. This is going to be, I think, a move just like we saw only moments ago from some of our other drivers trying to hold it all the way around the outside, but Sauer can't quite make it count all the way, but he cuts back to the pit lane there. So in the end, it's a feint to the pit, and now for Sauer, it's going to be all about has he timed the strategy right. Meanwhile, we look back up to the front of the field, and Jack Atkinson is still your race leader. Mark Beckhouse has moved into P2 ahead of Nathan Wade with Jackson behind, and we still have Vandermaiden and Burns on the rear. So the top 6 still stays together, albeit now separated by 1.7 seconds. They have opened up a little bit, and it's Vandermaiden who has lost out slightly compared to the top 4. But as they head into the braking zone here for turn at number 7, you can see they all gradually concertina back together. And it does mean they're not really out of the hunt. We've got a 6-way fight for the win so far. And can anybody else bring themselves in as a belligerent to this fight? We'll have to see. We have reached the halfway point of the race. We've still got just under 20 minutes to go. And that means there is still plenty to look forward to. But the question is, who out of this top 6 is going to play their cards right with the pit stop and also making the moves on circuit? And meanwhile, further back, we do see here Paolo Anzioso has been passed for Arton Motorsport Blue in that P10 position. He's been passed for P9 by Gordon Van den Bergen as the Sickhead Racing driver continued to rise his way up through the ranks little by little, but he's making a consistent ground as now he has got what is a 17.5 second gap to Jeff Randall in P8, who has recently lost the place to Rodriguez. But as they head up towards turn number 13, Van den Bergen will just look to break away before he starts to think about anything else today. And as we say hello there to Zaudi in the YouTube chat, who's cheering on Nathan Wade, and we see Wade here and saying Nathan Wade for the win. And we also say hello there to Cam SR 1997, who is cheering on both Gordon Van den Bergen and also Arton Motorsport as a whole, and that is Paolo Anzioso. But meanwhile, we look to this battle for P2, and Wade now making his way up the inside of Beckhouse, and Beckhouse showing no signs of wanting to fight this. He's making it clear to everyone, you use your fuel, I just simply want to save mine and not lose race time. And as they come through Sunset Bend, everybody taking their racing lines. Will anybody pop to the pits this time around? Jackson does not. I thought it was a tight line. He may have been considering it, but they all stayed together. We can see at the rear of the picture, that is Rodriguez with Jeff Randall into the pit lane, interestingly. So Randall deciding to go for an early pit stop to try and undercut Rodriguez, who only moments ago found his way on past. As they head up towards turn number 3 once more, we take a look back at how exactly the move was done for P7 by Johan Rodriguez. was in the run out to turn 16 as they made the way on down the back straight here. And Rodriguez on the inside, and Randall, I think, expecting that the move was going to be inevitable given the slow run he did have off a turn 16. But as they then made their way up towards Sunset Bend, was there a counter-attack from Randall under braking? No, he just simply tucked in and let the move play out. Then I think Randall, thinking about the strategy now more than anything, as a slide through the corner, confirmed his fate to drop the position. But as we return to the live pictures, ladies and gents, when you're looking back to the top 6 now, we're focusing on Brian Jackson in particular here as he continues to chase after Beckhouse. But as they head up towards that turn number 10, meanwhile, we can tell you that one driver right now who had a very early pit stop due to having picked up on the car, and we're not sure if he can go to the end on the fuel he's got, but if he is able to, this is going to be a colossal effort. Stefan Herman here heading up towards turn number 7 gradually now. He's just found his way past Jeff Randall, and Herman is charging in terms of pace. He is running the leader's pace right now. He does also own, well, he previously did own the fastest lap of this race. In fact, he still owns it, we should correct ourselves, on a 2:23.99, but given the fact his first pit stop's time was only 6.7 seconds, my gut feeling suggests that Herman may need to come into the pits towards the end of this race to get a little bit of fuel to get him to the end. I don't think he's done enough in the pit lane unless he's going to pull off a miracle with regards to strategy here, and let's not say it's not possible. Of course, we saw the miracle of Cristian Pérez making it to the end of the feature on that single tank of fuel when it was a 70% fuel tank that they started with, but down to 60% now, and I think Herman will just have to make that dip to the pits at some point in the race proceedings that are remaining. But then again, with Randall behind, I think Randall will just look to stay behind Herman and gain as much time as he can to get back versus, what is it, Rodriguez. Meanwhile, we look to Daniel Tufts, and he's chasing after Chris Wayne. Both of these drivers have pitted, it should be pointed out, and now for Tufts, he's got to try and find his way through on track. He can't do this on strategy anymore, as behind we do have Smithhurst battling with Titus de Jong, and Smithhurst clearing de Jong in the run into turn 10. But as we continue to watch Tufts versus Wayne here, I look out my contact booth window, and Nathan Wade is into the pit lane. He's the first of the top 6 to come on in, and we will watch his progress now in terms of when he comes out of the pit lane. Where's he going to end up, and how much lap time can he gain as the top 5 have all decided to stay out? We continue to watch the battle for P15 for this brief moment, as Tufts just stays behind Wayne for the time being. But as they make the way up towards Le Mans corner, Tufts there goes a little bit deep on the entry through the King, and you can see there how that's compromised his time slightly. And behind, meanwhile, Paul Smithhurst going for the cut back here versus Titus de Jong in the run for Le Mans corners. De Jong got ahead through 15, but now as they head on down the Ulmer Straight, Smithhurst will have the run here for a brief moment, but you can see how de Jong coming up the inside. But how long will it be before Smithhurst gets his nose ahead and then tries to cement it in the long run through Sunset Bend? Well, de Jong's going to defend it as best as possible. Both drivers have made their pit stops. They are battling for position to the very end, but de Jong there holding that inside line firmly in control, and Smithhurst having to back out of it and set the run up towards turn number 1. But meanwhile, looking from them, we do look to Nathan Wade, and here he is, the driver who's the first to pit outside of the top 6, and he has got out in P10. He is behind Nigel Easy, but he is the highest placed driver who has taken a pit stop, so he is effectively the leader of the stoppers, and in return he now has track position to his advantage in terms of he's got clear air. But the question will be, Atkinson, Beckhouse, Jackson, Vandermaiden and Burns, how will they all react to this? Will they decide to come in come the end of this lap, or at least some of them to react and cover off Wade? Or will Wade now just have clear air to be able to put the laps in, because the battle is still on inside the top 5, and Atkinson right now has actually been bought some time here. He's got a 5/10 of a second gap, or half second, as they make their way up towards Le Mans corner, and that is going to just give him some breathing room here to start to think about that decision, with Beckhouse and Jackson separated from him by now 4/10 and 3/10 respectively, as they make their way up towards turn number 17, powering their way on through. We do see there in the rear of the picture Ronnie Rodriguez going a little bit deep, but meanwhile Jackson coming off the inside here, and I think trying to bleed off a bit of speed in the run up towards Sunset Bend, not to get himself too close and complicate his turning approach for Sunset as he comes on through and into the braking zone. Well, now Jackson brings it nicely through, but does he peel off here? I think Jackson will. He takes a very tight exit line. He's into the pits, and so is Atkinson and Van der Eyden. So we've seen 3 of them come in this time, and I think they're responding to the threat of what is Wade. And now the question is, as Beckhouse and Burns carry on, and also Rodriguez in the rear of the picture, and Rodriguez is gaining on this group, it should be pointed out, little by little. Well, where is Nathan Wade? Here he is as he makes his way into Sunset Bend. This is going to be very close between them, but as Wade comes on through here, making his way through the final final corner. Easy coming out of the final corner into the pit lane, so Wade will not have any obstructions potentially as he heads to the timeline. He'll have a clear run into turn 1, but as he comes on down now, Atkinson leaving his pit box. We can see Atkinson heading on through. They make the way out to him. We look to the blimp camera. Where is Atkinson? There he is in the pit lane. He's got to take the pit exit line, but Nathan Wade jumps ahead and he gains a whole second on the pack. Nathan Wade has timed this to perfection as he moves up into what is effectively the lead of this race right now. We're going to predict that, but given Beckhouse and Burns, if they can't respond to this, well, Wade has pulled himself room to play with, and if he can break away and get that gap up to 2 seconds, he will be unassailable for the remainder of this race. Atkinson re-emerges P5, that's effective P2, we reckon, albeit depends on Beckhouse and Burns, and then Jackson and Van der Meyden a little bit further back, and they have not saved anywhere near as enough fuel in order to stay in the fight, with Jackson having 17.6 seconds stationary time in the pits, Rudy Van der Meyden 17.1 seconds, and in fact they've fallen back to this battle between Jeff Randall and Stefan Herman, and well, right now I think Jeff Randall's not going to believe the fact he's been given the treat of battling with 2 drivers who are well up the road by comparison. As they head up towards turn number 10 here, you see Randall right now, he's got to try and pick his way through one by one as we ride on board with the Gone Skipping Racing driver, and already signalling his intent here as he keeps the car slightly ajar with regards to the run into turn 10, but as they break the way in, brings it back to the racing line very gradually. The Van der Meyden will be looking in his rear view mirrors and thinking, when's Randall going to try and go for it, if he is going to go for it at any point on this lap, and that's the thing the mind games begin to build. As you start to make yourself a little bit unpredictable behind, he has to brake quite early and clatter his way over the apex of the tower corner. And he'll be a bit sensitive to the fact that's going to knock the suspension about slightly, not knock it out of alignment. He's got to be careful to do that too many times, as always the suspension will start to feel the effect and he will lose that wheel alignment. But as he comes down into turn 15 now, we've got Beckhouse and Burns making the way into the pit lane, and we continue to ride on board here with Randall as he heads into Le Mans. Now bringing the car through the right hand, and we can see Van der Meyden, they're getting a nice run. Randall doing the same, albeit a little bit of a travel to the dirt there on the front left tyre, and Jackson under pressure now as Randall decides to place his bets behind Van der Meyden as they head up towards turn number 17, and it's going to be tight here as they come into Sunset. He's going to make it 3 wide for a brief moment. He's got the overspeed, it's the double toe, Randall in the middle, Van der Meyden on the inside and Jackson on the outside. Van der Meyden cuts it back to the inside as they come on through, but I think Randall's gone for the Moses manoeuvre. He's parted the seas, but will he find his way to victory here as he comes on out? Well, I think it's not enough as Van der Meyden comes back through, and meanwhile Randall here on the offensive, as meanwhile we do look to Nathan Wade, who makes his way out of the pit lane. And where's Beckhouse, where's Burns? Well, Beckhouse and Burns are right behind, and Atkinson is P4, so Beckhouse and Burns have nailed their pit stops, but it's Nathan Wade who's absolutely hit it with perfect precision with regards to strategy. He is your leader ahead of Beckhouse, Burns and Atkinson, and then Rodriguez P5, who has pitted, and he's jumped ahead of Jeff Randall, Brody Van der Meyden and also Ryan Jackson, as in fact Jeff Randall did find his way past Van der Meyden into turn 1. That was off camera, we'll take a look back at that very shortly, but right now Rodriguez making it counter strategy and Nathan Wade absolutely nailing it. But now it's all going to come down to the final 10 minutes, and with Wade only 0.6 of a second clear of Beckhouse, he will be reeled in, we would predict, as this race wears on. As meanwhile Daniel Tuff's behind in P12 here, battling with Gordon and Van den Bergen as they make the way up towards what is turn at number 7, and these two inseparable as they chase their way Arthur Ludwig South for the final spot inside the top 10 in the feature. But as they come on down here, we have also Chris Wayne to leave the pit lane, and Ziosa and Smithhurst into the pits as well, taking their pit stops for the day, their scheduled stops, rather than what was the first stop they made for repair work on the cars. Unfortunate for them, but still they've been enjoying some great battlings. We're hearing that Smithhurst in fact had to retire the car. They found an issue with the engine, and therefore they decided not to bring the car back out and try to get it repaired. Understandable, they look to try and preserve the car for next week's races, but as we do see a Tuffs here looking around the outside of Van den Bergen, well, would he be able to find the move here under braking? My feeling says he's going all in here, and well, he nails it. Warm brakes, warm tyres, the tyres are fully rubbered in, and he gets it done there. Lovely move from Tuffs to move into P11 in the run on through turns 10 into 11, as they head up towards 12 and 13. You can see there Van den Bergen trying to come back, but he can't find it immediately. Meanwhile, we look back to the front of the field. And we can see Nathan Wade here under pressure now from Beckhouse. Well, Beckhouse was going to close up gradually. He's done so already. And looking up the inside here, Wade, of course, now having to play the game of patience with the number of laps remaining. It's not about leading on the laps until the very final corner and indeed the final lap. And that's what Wade will be thinking about here. He needs to time this right. He can't afford to fall out of P2 for the simple reason. The more cars you got in front of you, the harder it is to recover towards the end. But Burns is looking at him right now, thinking about his opportunities to take the win of this race, as is Atkinson. This four-way fight is going to go down to the wire. There's a guarantee of that as they head on to what for them is their 14th turn of the Sebring circuit under race conditions in this feature race. All four of these drivers absolutely vying for the win and nobody giving any quarter. As we want Young Rodriguez up the inside there. Jeff Randall to defend for P5. Randall back in the fight now with his rival from earlier on in this race. As they come for the left-hander turn number 3, or regress we should say, as we stumble over our R's and not let them roll. And the Spaniard here only moments ago trying to make ground on the top 4 and now finding himself being forced away from the top 4 again, as he does have Randall keeping him honest as they head through Big Bend. But coming on down towards the braking zone for the hairpin, of course, of the Firebird Sim Racing driver. He'll take the points he can get here, and his goal now will be to hold on to that P5 until the very end. And meanwhile, behind we have Vandermaiden and Ryan Jackson, who I think will be questioning how on earth they end up dropping into this battle rather than being the top battle. And it's all on fuel, saying they just did not save enough fuel on that open stint by comparison, and that's what's dropped them down a pack. But meanwhile, as they head up towards Fangio and into Cunningham very short, you can see Vandermaiden already starting to tease out the initial move versus Randall, or trying to send signals, but not quite able to close up the gap there in order to be able to fully commit. Meanwhile, we look back to Beckhouse, your race leader, and right on board the gearbox of the Speedboard Academy car as it makes its way out to turn number 13. Now, of course, at this point, as time's worn down, tiredness starts to kick in. Of course, our drivers will practice for these races. They'll put in the time, they'll put in the effort. Although we do see there, Zaudi saying, bear in mind, only 45 minutes practice time for Nathan Wade, but still 45 minutes. He's made it count, but this is where the exhaustion and the adrenaline factor comes in. They all feel as though now they want the race to end favourably for them. They'll know that the clock is wearing down, and Nathan Wade runs a little bit wide there. And the point is that when you're wearing down like this, mistakes can start to occur. And Beckhouse is given a lifeline here of half a second as they make the way halfway down Allman, and you can see already Burns now starting to get into the mix. And we said watch out for Burns earlier on. He may be looking to start to gain some ground, having worked with Beckhouse for so long. And well, the privateer gets the move done for P2 for the time being. Through Sunset up the inside. Wade's not going to fight it because he knows that he needs to have another shot at Burns, and Burns right now is 3/10 behind Beckhouse, and they need to close back up. And that's the thing, it's 4D chess, as we like to say, in the fact they're trying to predict their moves against one another. They're also trying to think so far ahead in terms of time, albeit on the three-dimensional circuit. And as they make their way through turn number 1 at this point, the question will be for Burns is, does he now try and attack Beckhouse, or does he just try to hold on to P2 and set up the move at the very end? Well, as we see the 4 here make the way up towards turn number 5, Rodriguez meanwhile still holding on to P5 with Ryan Jackson going around the outside there versus Vandermaiden to take P6, and Jeff Randall dropping to P8 by comparison, and Randall being robbed of 3 places, I think, for one corner. And we do very shortly get a replay of what exactly happened to Randall as they make their way out of Big Bend now and down towards turn number 7. You can see Jackson here under pressure from Vandermaiden once again, and Vandermaiden looking for that run to P6, trying to do everything he can now to try and gain a little bit more time on circuit. But in return, Jackson coming off and saying, you're not passing here whether you like it or not. And Jackson really going defensive there into the hairpin, not losing any time behind Rodriguez, relatively speaking. And that goes to show you the Briton all fired up here and doing everything he can to go hunting after that P5 position as they make their way past our camera. Their beautiful camera shot as they make their way up past the curve of turn at number 9, and it sets them up for the run into 10. Heading on through and up towards Tower now. We look to Mark Beckhouse once again, whereas he comes through at Tower corner looking strong, but still Burns now also trying to up the tempo, but Burns runs a little bit wide there, and Beckhouse right now will be gaining awareness of the fact that everybody behind him is starting to make small errors, and perhaps this just means for the Speedboard Academy driver the pressure is starting to wane a little bit, albeit it won't feel like it, but when he does see those mistakes it'll just give him a little bit more confidence. But he'll just take one lap at a time, as after this lap we will have 2 more laps to go in this feature race. And right now Beckhouse weaving a little bit on the exit of turn 16 there to try and break the toe. Being able to drive through the DRS board there, thankfully, it is only there as a visual on our screen. But as they make their way up towards turn at number 17, down the Allman Straight, and Beckhouse covering off of Burns here, we should say, as Burns looks to go around the outside. He can't quite find it initially, but Beckhouse plants it, and meanwhile Wade and also Atkinson both going a bit deep, but Burns there loses momentum, and Beckhouse once again holds the lead. Meanwhile, Rodriguez there going overly deep into Sunset Bend, and we can see Jackson Van der Meyden coming on through with Jeff Randall right behind him. Rodriguez loses 2 place for 1 corner as they head across line. 2 more laps remaining here, and as they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 1, Rodriguez is coming back as they head into the left-hander. He gets alongside already Van der Meyden. Jeff Randall makes it 3 wide. He looks to commit all the way to the apex here. And Rodriguez covers him off slightly, just a slight pinch to the wall, but they're still 3 wide as they exit the corner. Randall not able to carry the momentum. He backs out there as the road begins to narrow, but it was a bold attempt there from Randall, and meanwhile still going to commit to the move on Jackson. If he can, oh goodness me, there's contact between Jackson and Randall then looked for the move on the inside, but the car went on around, and a small tap has proved fatal for his opportunity to take P5. Has gone skipping racing as he now has Remco Placia, who's trying to chase after him, albeit 5 seconds down. But meanwhile, 1 falls and 3 are still in that battle for P5, and as they head up towards the hairpin this time around, Rodriguez now, although he's got the position, 1's out of that fight, but he's still got 2 assailants hot on his heels as he heads up towards turn number 10. And meanwhile, we do look back up to the leaders here as they're about to enter turn 10, and onto the brakes they go, and Beckhouse here has got Burns close behind once more as we ride on board the gearbox here and look back from the Speedboard Academy machine. And Burns here, well, the closest he's been for some time, but at the same time with 2.5 tenths between them, he'll be just thinking about sizing up that final lap, because this is the penultimate lap, and this is not the lap where you want to be the leader. It's come the very end of that final lap. You want the move done by the time you get to Sunset Bend, because there is 1 defensive line you can take it to Sunset Bend. If you park at an apex, you're all said and done, and Beckhouse right now will know that's where he needs to be. That's where the victory will be as he comes into turn number 15, and as he heads up towards Le Mans here, you can see the tyres are wearing down. The apexes aren't as smooth in terms of their approach or exit now, not quite as close to meeting them, but Beckhouse stays on circuit there. The precision is phenomenal from Beckhouse. The pressure may be building, but there are no signs of the consistency waning, and as they head down Allman here, will Beckhouse continue to head up towards top gear, but in return Burns now looking around the outside, again being made to go the long way around. This is exactly what Beckhouse wants. He's well versed in this defensive line. Wade also trying to make his way into this battle, looking on the inside there versus Burns, and now as Wade tries to get on the power, Atkinson as well, as it's 3 wide behind Beckhouse as they head onto the final lap. The white flag waves here, and Burns and Wade are coming on through. Atkinson as well. It's 3 wide in the battle for P2 as we briefly lose Wade, but he rematerialises from the ether, and as they come down, Burns on the inside, Wade and Atkinson on the outside. Beckhouse is clear, and as they come on through the rotation point, we can see that it's Burns who's still ahead. Meanwhile, Atkinson now trying to come back on the inside of Wade here up into turn 3. It's going to be close on the brakes here, and this could really change the body language of the final lap, as meanwhile Atkinson does move into P3, gets it down the inside, and Nathan Wade with a bold start to the final lap, losing out dear and drops the P4, albeit still in this hump, but now he's made the change even harder to take the win, but as this top 4 makes his way through Big Ben. The next crunch point, of course, will be turn number 7, as we see already Burns having to cover off Atkinson. Atkinson really starting to dig in, and also Beckhouse under threat, but not as much threat here as Burns is from Atkinson as he goes all in on the brakes. There's a little bit of contact there between them as they exit out. Atkinson initially gets it done, but Burns comes back, and Atkinson has the back of the throttle with the contact, and Burns holds on by a sliver. But of course, Beckhouse here being given all the opportunities to simply stay ahead and keep himself calm, cool, and collected, as once again Atkinson sends it into turn 10. He's looking for these moves. He wants this win, does Atkinson. He feels he's got it. Burns meanwhile comes outside to inside into 11, and Wade tries to come in as well. Now Atkinson will have the inside into 12 and 13, but is there going to be enough space for him as Wade backs off on the outside? Atkinson makes it 2 wide on the approach to Tower Corner. They exit here, they give each other space, but Burns goes deep, he goes wide, and as he returns to the circuit, it's 3 wide here, all the way down to Bishop Corner, and goodness me lads, keep it clean. It's going to get very tight, and Wade goes round the outside of the pair of them, Can he get it on the brakes down to the inside into 15? I think he can as they break down. There's just enough room and Nathan Wade moves into what is P2 there in a brilliant counter-attacking pass. But as they come into Le Mans corner, it's given Beckhouse a whole second onto the final stretch, and it means as they make the way down Ullman, the battle for the lead is arguably over as Burns goes wide. He drops out the battle for the P2 down the penultimate corner, but meanwhile Wade now under pressure from Atkinson. Meanwhile Beckhouse holding on at the very front, and Wade is covering off Atkinson all the way to the end. It's too wide as they make the way into the corner here in the battle for P2, and Wade on the inside will hold it as Atkinson drifts the car sliding away. But meanwhile at the front of the field as they both lose traction, it's Mark Beckhouse who leads it all the way to the line. It's been a brilliant defence and he takes the win for Speed World Academy in the end by 1.5 seconds over Jack Atkinson, who takes P2 ahead of Nathan Wade, who's passed at the finish line, and David Burns P4 ahead of Jon Rodriguez P5, who just completes the race ahead of Jackson and Van der Meeden. And then it is Jeff Randall P8 losing out towards the end with that contact with Jackson at turn number 3. And it will be Remco Applasia very shortly who comes through for P9 for RT Racing. And he'll be ahead of Daniel Tubbs, who completes the run to the end of the top 10 in P10. The number 34 driver there, and a great drive in the second race of the day. And that'll be Ludwig Sauer, P11, ahead of Gordon von den Bergen in P12. And it'll be Stefan Hermann, who in the end could only finish 13th with that second pit stop having to be made. But still, there's plenty more races to go for him, with Nigel Easy, P14, as he comes on through to the timeline here. And then we do have a bit of a gap to Titus de Jong and Chris Wayne, who I believe are battling for position for P15, and in fact here they are as they make the way into Sunset Bend, and with Titus de Jong in the end will hold the position, we reckon, for RT Racing ahead of the Gone Skipping Racing machine of Wayne. Presumably he's got enough fuel to get to line. He's going quite slowly. Has he run out of fuel right at the finish here? No, he's just got enough. He's going to splutter across line P15, Chris Wayne P16, and then it will be Paolo Anzioso who'll be the last of our finishers on the lead lap. And indeed everybody who finishes this race will finish on the lead lap. Anzioso a bit further back for Arton Motorsport Blue, but it doesn't matter whether they've won the race or Turdy Fish P17. They all deserve a round of applause for a fantastic pair of races today and great racing throughout. We did have 4 retirements in the form of Paul Smithhurst, Rasmus Vuori, Kevin Budgen, and also JT Kopinen, with Kopinen not able to take to the grid for this race, but with 20 effective starters, 17 finish, all in the lead lap, and the consistency has shone through from all drivers as Anzioso comes through for the final corner and heads to the timeline. As he crosses the line very shortly, he'll be thinking about the next pair of race and how he can move himself a bit further up the field. As we can see our flagman there, Barney Flag, waving to his arm's content, and the race is complete, ladies and gentlemen. But what a race, and with it, let's take you through those race results, subject to any Stewards inquiries. So in our second race of the day, round 4 of the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy for 2023, as brought to you by Gone Skipping Racing, sponsored by Musical Money, here today at the Sebring International Raceway circuit in the state of Florida. Mark Beckhouse making it the win in the feature race by 1.5 seconds for Speed World Academy, ahead of the priorities of Jack Atkinson and Nathan Wade. Brilliant battling between Atkinson and Wade all the way to the end, but after the battle between them really developed into its peak, we saw Beckhouse given the opportunity to break away, and Atkinson really wanting to push on for that P2 and the win, but in pushing so hard, of course, cost himself the opportunity to hunt Beckhouse down. Still, a well-deserved podium for all 3 drivers, and in David Burns at P4, the privateer, just missing out in the end at Tower Corner, running a bit deep, and the same on Le Mans Corner, but still, he'll take a lot of confidence from today into the future rounds, with Jon Rodriguez P5 there for Firebird Sim Racing, holding off Ryan Jackson, Roddy van der Meeden, and Jeff Randall, with then Remco Applasia for RT Racing P9, ahead of Daniel Tufts, who completed the top 10. Best of the rest in P11, Ludwig Sauer ahead of Gordon van den Bergen. The sick-head racing driver not able to recover back to the top 10 in the end. Stefan Hermann P13 with that early instant cost him dear and what was race-leading pace throughout today. And then Nigel Easy P14 ahead of Titus de Jong for RT Racing, with Gone Skipping Racing's Chris Wayne ahead of Paolo Anzioso, who finished P17 for Arton Motorsport Blue, to complete our drivers who finished the race, and all of them on the lead lap. As for other drivers, our retirees, We can confirm Paul Smith first with the retirement 5 laps from the end. Rasmus Vuori with the retirement 17 laps from the end. The same for Kevin Budgen. Both drivers involved in separate incidents on the opening lap, costing them dear. And JT Kopinen not able to take to the grid for the feature race of the day. But congratulations to all of our drivers for their performances in this pair of rounds. And well, that's all the racing complete, ladies and gentlemen. But we're not quite just done yet with regards to the show. Because of course, we've got to see all the race in action. But what about if we hear firsthand from some of our drivers and their perspectives on the racing? We'll be back in approximately 10 minutes for our post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for us to conduct our post-round interviews with our volunteering drivers. And we've got the same trio, as you may remember, from rounds 1 and 2. We'll be hearing from, firstly, Nathan Wade, the number 15 driver in the privateer machine, who, having qualified P18, fought his way out to P7 in the sprint and into P3 in the feature, losing out what was a potential second place in the end, with himself and Atkinson having a bit of an incident on the final corner and also running out of fuel just before the finish line, in which saw Atkinson retake the P2. We'll then be hearing from Mark Beckhaus from Speed World Academy, having started P11 in qualifying and the sprint race moving to P9. It was all about the feature race. We brought home the win with a brilliant defence. And then Jeff Randall from Gone Skipping Racing, of course, our host of the series, having qualified on pole, taking up P4 in the sprint and P8 in the feature. It wasn't to be his day today, but we do start off, of course, with none other than Nathan Wade, and as he now joins me in the interview room. Good evening to you, Nathan. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. Well, I have to ask you the big question. How was it for you tonight, given it was a roller coaster ride from start to finish?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, I loved it, to be fair. A bit of roller coaster of emotions, to be fair. From getting in quite late into practice, I literally have not driven at all this week, so I only got the 45 minutes of practice. Looking forward to quali. It was on my, I think, first flying lap or second flying lap, and mid corner, force feedback just went, wheel flung right round, and I went straight off the track into the wall, and that was kind of my quali over from then. And so it was kind of damage limitation from then on. So quite happy with the P7 in the sprint race. It was a good fight back up the field. I'm kind of disappointed in the P3. Entirely my fault. If I'd have just put in, I don't know, 0.2 of a litre more, I'd have been able to get across the line. But I lost fuel and started cutting out on the last corner, so I had to try and send it deep, almost lost it, and then just lost that little drag race with Jack at the end.
Oh, goodness me. Well, like you say, a roller coaster of emotions, and just covering your point on qualifying. So coming in quite late into the session and then force feedback going. And also from what we've been hearing in the YouTube chat from one of your colleagues, Azaldi, saying only 45 minutes practice time for yourself. You've really come into it hot, and then, well, qualifying at P18, but finding your way through the order as quickly as possible. It's almost as if you had to learn on the job, and also be a bit wary of your force feedback, deciding whether it was going to stay alive for the sprint.
Yeah, it was not fun to deal with. I did have it cut out. It was okay in the second race, but in the first race I had it cut out 2 or 3 times. And it's just muscle memory of what you're used to. It's so confusing to try and fight turning your wheel, putting any effort into turning your wheel when you go to a corner, and you just have no idea if you're going to lose the rear because you cannot feel anything. It's absolutely horrendous, but it's probably not too bad. If you do a couple of laps, you'll probably get used to it quite quickly, but it's just when it comes on all of a sudden, it just scares you.
Oh, I can only imagine. And, well, it didn't catch you out too much in the end, and bringing on home that P7, setting yourself up, well, quite successfully for the feature race with the reverse grid, meaning that you would be starting P4 on the grid. I have to ask, with the ground you made in the sprint race and going into the feature, surely the confidence levels must have been pretty high given how much pace you had over the course of each lap.
Yeah, definitely. I was aiming for a win. That was my target. I thought I was going to be going for the win, and then I kind of lined myself up quite poorly going into that last lap. And obviously, because Jack got past me, turn 2, I thought it was pretty much over. Kind of need to be P3 if I wanted to make a move. And then obviously Jack and David were just fighting for the rest of the lap. So Mark managed to get away. I set my sights on P2, and then I just screwed myself over with my fuel usage, sadly. But I did spend that entire second stint kind of conserving fuel, which is why I didn't want to lead. I wanted to kind of just stay behind, and I was on the clutch 90% of the time into corners. So, but sadly, it weren't enough. But at the end of the day, P3 is good enough, and it's good damage limitation, so I'm happy.
Well, indeed, going into this pair of rounds as our championship leader, our early riser, and with the combination of results still maintaining a healthy score of points going into rounds 5 and 6, just coming on to actually being on the Sebring circuit, this circuit very different from Charlotte. Charlotte being a circuit that was very smooth with regards to its track surface, but a multitude of banked corners and also hairpins. Around here, however, it looked incredibly bumpy, particularly with the concrete slabs on the runway section. Just take us through from your perspective what it's like driving around here in the Skip Barber, given how low the car sits to the ground.
I love it. I think it's a brilliant track to drive in the Skip here. It creates really good races as well. As long as you're staying off those curbs in sort of the middle sector, it tends to be okay. But it's a brilliant car to drive this track on. So it's great fun.
Well, it definitely looks as though you're enjoying yourself out there, and with the battling that we saw, particularly in the opening stint, the six-way fight between yourself, Beckhouse, Atkinson, also Burns, Vandermaiden, and Jeff Randall, we saw you all going toe-to-toe for so long. We'll just take us through that dynamic, 6 of you on an opening stint, and at no point did you ever separate as a group more than 2 seconds.
I was just gonna play kind of follow the leader, trade P1 for the first stint, and then when we get towards the end, we'll start battling. Jack seemed like he wanted to battle, and I know Mark's not too bothered about me battling with him from last week, so I thought I'd give it a go. Started sending it in a couple of corners, and it just creates a really fun race, and it's really enjoyable the whole time. So looking forward to next week.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of next week, in a week's time, we head down under to Australia for the Mount Panorama circuit, but everybody knows it as Bathurst. How are you feeling for the trip up the mountain?
Buzzed. I'm buzzed for that track. I really love the track. Top of the hill. It's just great section of corners to drive, especially in this car as well. The only shame is it's a very drafty circuit. That's the only bit that I kind of don't like. But it's a brilliant track to drive. Absolutely love it.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in Australia in a week's time, and I think that confidence may go a long way. But just before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Shout out to Jeff, obviously, for running the league and everyone behind that as well. You guys all do a great job. Really enjoying the league at the minute. Shout out to you, Paul, for putting on a brilliant broadcast as always. And then shout out to Zaldi for the support, and Nick as well, because I know he couldn't make it tonight. But yeah, shout out to them too.
Well, I do think that Zaldi and also Nick will appreciate the shout out there, and we'll probably see a message from Zaldi in the YouTube chat very shortly. But coming up back to yourself, Nathan, it's been a pleasure to see you tackle the circuit today. And whilst the results didn't go perfectly, still a great score taking you forward in the championship, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Nathan Wade, our privateer, who in the end, in his own words, went quite the difficult way about it, having joined into qualifying quite late and losing all his force feedback on his second lap, meaning he could only qualify P18. And when you can imagine there, one moment you can feel all the resistance in the steering wheel, and at the next moment you just don't feel anything, and having to adapt to that at very short notice, and then going into the sprint race, still with the force feedback issues, but climbing to P7 to set himself up for a P4 reverse grid in the feature, and in the battle which you're seeing on screen currently as part of the replay footage in the background, having to take on that fight, and in the end fighting for P2, potentially even the win, but fuel saving, plus also the battle of Atkinson, seeing him drop to the battle purely for P2 and running out of fuel on the line. A frustrating way to end the day, but still plenty of points being picked up, and it does mean that Nathan Wade, I believe he's not leading this championship. He's going to be very close to the championship leader going into our next pair of rounds. But speaking of moving on to next things, we now move on to our second interview of the evening, and it will be none other than Mark Beckhouse. And as we do get ready to speak to Mark Beckhouse, of course, picking up another win today in the feature race and a solid performance throughout. And well, the number 11 driver continuing that run of momentum from Charlotte. And as we just wait for confirmation that he is good to go, and in fact we have had that confirmation, he joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Mark, and well, let me firstly say a fantastic drive to win in the feature race. Absolute perfection from start to finish, but it didn't look easy to win the feature, nor to climb to P9 in the sprint. It looked tough out there today.
Yeah, good evening, Paul. Yeah, it was just a cracker of a race, the last race. Really good fun. And yeah, the same results as last race. Yeah, really screwed up qualifying, and then somebody spin in front of me on the first lap in the first race. Could go back to ninth, was a good race, and the last one was just awesome. Battles all the time. Yeah, just amazing race. Could save some.
We'll say after you.
Yeah, could save some fuel and could go a lap longer than the guys around me. And then when I come out of pits, Nathan was there, and don't know who was involved. Yeah, was just a really good race. All the last laps were really intense.
Oh, indeed. You sound absolutely breathless from it all, and I can understand with the intensity. But just taking it back to qualifying, it all didn't quite work out in qualifying, and with the top 13 separated by less than a second. From your perspective, where did you expect to be in qualifying, given how close it was?
To be honest, no expectations. As yeah, in practice, you can see the field was close, and yeah, I thought I had a good run behind. Don't remember this guy's name. Sorry. Then make a mistake on the second lap, lost his draft, and I get a little bit nervous and make two off tracks in good laps, and yeah, whatever. But yeah, was just fun.
Well, the fun extended into the sprint race, and after that early instant which saw you drop down the field, I have to ask, what's it like trying to overtake here at Sebring? Because it looks so the majority of the lap you can go too wide, survive it, and keep the pace.
Yeah, I wouldn't take too much risk in the first race. Yeah, as I saw, I could get in the top 10, good position for the second race, and yeah, I don't want to take any risk in the first race.
Well, understandable. And with that P9 finish in the sprint, we saw you start P2 on the grid for the purposes of the feature race. A great start off the line from yourself, and then leading the pack for so long in that six-way battle on the opening stint. Was it always your target to be the leader of the pack and just save fuel up front, or were you hoping perhaps you could drop into the pack to do some fuel saving?
Yeah, I let I think about 4 or 5 laps before the pit stops. I let the guys through and was just saving fuel, and yeah, could go a lap longer, and yeah, worked out well. And the last laps after the pit stop, I was just defending, pushing and defending.
Oh, indeed. And when you had Nathan Wade right behind you, Jack Atkinson as well, and as the laps were coming down, it did look as though the battle behind you was starting to grow. Were you starting to think that they would fight more and more for P2 and you could just break away?
Yeah, was just hoping that, and yeah, I think on the penultimate lap, they get really into the fight, and I could build up a gap, and that was lucky for me.
Well, in the end, it worked out brilliantly for yourself, and come that final checker flag, taking the win by 1.5 seconds. Another win, and indeed another podium added to your accolades. And now we look ahead, of course, to rounds 5 and 6 in a week's time. It's Mount Panorama in Australia. How are you feeling for the trip to the mountain?
Yeah, Mount Panorama, just a nice track. Yeah, I think it will be close again, and yeah, maybe a little bit less drafts than here, but yeah, can't remember. It's a race with the Skippy there, but definitely a race there with the Skippy, and yeah, with these guys, it will be awesome again.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you also go.
Yeah, Road Atlanta, I think I can't make. due to work commitments. But yeah, let's see.
Well, it's unfortunate you may not be able to make Road Atlanta, but we definitely look forward to seeing how you get on in Australia next week. But just before we do let you go, Mark, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, for sure, Jeff. Everybody who's involved in organization, and well, I forgot to thank my team members last time, but I will do now. Thank you, guys. And yeah.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate the gratitude, Mark, but we're very grateful to have you join us for an interview this evening. But with that, congratulations on your results today, particularly the win in the feature race with a stoic defence, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time down under in Australia.
Yeah, guys, see you there. Thanks, Paul.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
So hearing there from Mark Beckhouse, the Speedworld Academy driver who had a difficult qualifying session, ended up with a difficult sprint race when early instance saw him drop towards the back of the field and have to recover to P9. But with that finishing position, it meant he had a prime opportunity to chase the win in the feature race, and well, it would come to him in the end with what was a brilliant finish, bringing home the win, but with the pressure all the way through of Jack Atkinson, Nathan Wade, David Burns, and also Rudy van der Meeden, and we also got to see it right up in that fight at certain points. Jan Rodriguez and Jeff Randall, who were chasing after it, and when the battling was that close, it could have gone any which way, but in the end it went the way of Mark Beckhouse. And if he can carry on this momentum, he'll keep himself firmly in contention as a contender, albeit I think he'll be looking back today and thinking that he could have perhaps got a slightly stronger performance in the sprint race, perhaps the top 5, and it would have given him some more points on the board. But still, he'll take what he's got, and he'll take it to Australia, there's no doubt about it. As we now get ready for our third interview of the season, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be with none other than Jeff Randall, the series organiser. And well, an interesting evening for Jeff in the fact that qualifying worked out a treat, timed his final lap to perfection, but then found in the sprint race he fell back a little bit, but not by too much. But it was in the feature race where he found himself in the second battle of the day, and with that, and didn't quite work out his way. But as we do get ready to take a listen to what he's got to say, keep in mind as well on the fact that it's going to be an interesting battle between him and Rodriguez for the remainder of the season. But as he does join me now in the interview room, Jeff, it looked as though it was going all perfectly. Qualifying, you nailed that lap, delivered it right at the end of the session when there was no time left for anybody else to counter it. Sprint race, a P4, a strong P4, but it did look as though Vuori and also what was Herman broke away a little bit early. And in the feature race, battling hard for P7, found yourself in a battle for P5, and in a bit of contact, saw you go round for P8. Mixed emotions from today?
It was great fun, actually. I loved it. I mean, the quali, yeah, pure luck that I got behind David Burns for the quick lap, and the timing was just impeccable. I wasn't sure when I started the lap if I was going to be able to complete it, but yeah, there were a couple of seconds over, and yeah, chuffed to get out on pole position. Yeah, that's really good. I was happy with that. Come the race. Stefan and Rasmus, they just, ran away like a couple of scared rabbits in the headlights. Off they went. And then it was just a really good scrap between myself, Juan, David, and Rody. Yeah, any one of us could have got the third position there. It was just a cracking scrap right the way through in the sprint race. Really enjoyed that.
Oh, indeed. Breaking it up into component parts. In qualifying, firstly, we saw the lap times start off quite slow. We saw many drivers delivering mid-225s. And in Sunny, it was almost as if in the final 7.5 minutes, the circuit just came alive with the cars getting lighter. And we saw everybody charging into the low 224s, then 223s, and yourself, of course, setting a 223.6. How was it for you in qualifying? Because, of course, slipstream was important, but it was like the circuit just decided to pick up pace.
Yeah, it's all about the tyres getting up to temperature. In practice, did a 223.5 without draft, and that was with a light fuel load, and the tyres were cooking. So I think you only need about 3 or 4 laps to get the tyres up to temperature when it's this long a lap, and add a little bit of draft in there, and yeah, it's always going to help.
Indeed, but in the end you had to piece it all together and deliver on it at the right time. And then going into the sprint race, we saw a little bit of a slow start from yourself off the line. It looked as though you had to go immediately defensive into turn number 1. It was a very wide open corner, turn 1, at any race start here at Sebring. But it was 3 wide initially, and then the places started to drop a little bit with both Vuori and Herman charging the way through.
Yeah, I mean, their pace was incredible. I mean, I think myself and Juan got involved in a little tussle, maybe with Rody as well, which gave them just over a second, and then they worked together. They just worked as a team, and consistent lap after lap after lap. And I mean, you can see by the finish there that if Rasmus hadn't have had that incident, they would have both been 7, nearly 8 seconds ahead. Yeah, that's a cracking pace. I think Stefan got the quickest lap as well, didn't he, in that 23.5? So yeah, great pace from those guys.
Well, indeed, you're correct on that fast lap of 23.5, but with them breaking away in the end, it was a fight for P3 and downwards, and you held on to P4 in the sprint to set yourself up for what was, excuse me, a P7 start on the grid going into the feature race. P7, of course, is starting towards the mid-pack. It does get a little bit dense in that field in the run to turn number 1. Did it change the way you looked at the feature race in terms of how you're going to approach it from the outset, or was it just head down, it's another race?
Yeah, it's exactly that. You know, you try and keep it clean, try and stop, prevent any sort of contact, especially in the early stages. You don't want to ruin anyone's race in the early part of the race. So just trying to be sensible, and it was a bit messy, to be honest. Again, Mark, Jack, Nathan, and David managed to break away, and it left myself, Ryan, Juan, and Rody again, all having another good scrap. And I think just a little bit of contact with Ryan spun me round, and that left me with not a lot of chasing to do, apart from just sit there and in my own little race.
Well, indeed, it was unfortunate contact between yourself and Ryan towards the end of the race, where we did see a small tap between the tyres that sent you around at turn number 3. But before that, and we're looking at the pictures at the moment in the replay footage in the background, yourself and Johan Rodriguez continuously changing places in a battle. What was P7? It looks like you two were very isolated for that first stint. I have to ask, did you expect that the two of you would creep back into a battle for P5, or was it just you're going to be locked into this battle for the remainder of the race?
Well, no, we were trying to. Well, I was hoping we'd be able to try and creep back, and you may notice that Juan's wing was a bit bent, so he was a little bit compromised on top speed. So when it came to the straights, he was letting me go if I didn't make a mistake, and that was where the issue was. I made too many mistakes coming out of the third to last corner, just about to go down the back straight. Kept putting a tyre on the grass and slowing myself down. If it had have been, it was all ifs and buts, isn't it? If it had have been that perfect race, we may well have caught them up. But I took an early pit stop and did catch up with Rody again, which was great. So Rody and Ryan, maybe they had a bit of an issue with their pit stop, but yeah, managed to get on the back of them again. I got lucky coming out of the pits, getting behind Steph, and we kind of dragged each other around for about 3 laps.
Well, we did see you come out of the pits, as you say, with Stefan Herman and the two of you working together. And just to fill in the picture with regards to Rody van der Meiden and also what was Ryan Jackson, the two of them having the longest pit stops of anybody inside the top 10. No fuel saving seemed to have occurred. 17.5 seconds was the pit stop for Ryan Jackson in particular, and we saw them fall backwards to your pack, and then it was a 4-way fight all the way to the end. And of course, as we spoke to Mark Beckhouse only moments ago, Sebring Absolutely packed with battling from corner to corner in the Skip Barber Formula 2000 car, and it was no exception for you four.
No, no. I mean, it's a circuit. I mean, there's at least 3 very, very big overtaking spots, and if you take the other 2 tight right-handers, make that 5. If you want to just scrap for the whole lap, it's the perfect circuit to do it. But it doesn't exactly make you particularly quick, but it's really good fun.
Oh, indeed, and that's what it's all about, of course, enjoying these cars for the fun they can generate, and it looks like you and everybody around you is having fun from start to finish, and we'll may the fun continue when we head to Australia in a week's time. How are you feeling for the Mount Panorama circuit?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's one of my favourite tracks. Yeah, I just can't wait. Bring it on.
I'm loving the confidence and the gumption with it. But just before we do let you go, Jeff, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Well, a shout out to today's winners for sure, Mark and Stefan, great racing guys, and to everyone else for turning up, and you, Paul, for doing a superb job once again. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and likewise, thank you to yourself for joining me in the interview room. But with that, congratulations today on your performances in both the races and also in qualifying, and we do look forward to seeing you out on the tarmac in a week's time in Australia.
Thanks, Paul.
All the best. So here and there from Jeff Randall from Gone Skipping Racing, our pole sitter for today, going slightly backwards in the sprint race, but still well inside the top 5 with that P4 finish, and in the feature race, finding himself in collaboration with Juan Rodriguez, battling their way into contention to be in the fight for P5 with both what was Jackson and also Rody van der Maiden having a difficult pit stop, a longer pit stop, but a small bit of contact between Jeff and Ryan Jackson in the end, leading to the Gone Skipping Racing driver going round in a lonely P8 finish. But still great points picked up today for him. It'll keep him well in hunt inside the top 5, and may the progress continue in his mind as he makes his way to Australia. And with that confidence that he's taken away from today, I can imagine he will definitely be looking to make a win in either the sprint or the feature. But time will tell if he can make it a reality. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-round interviews for today. You've heard from our 3 drivers, starting with Nathan Wade, the privateer in the number 15 car. We then heard from Mark Beckhouse, our feature race winner for Speed World Academy in the number 11. And then we've just heard from Gone Skipping Races, Jeff Randall in the 107, our pole sitter, and also our double top 10 finisher, much like the peers we interviewed beforehand. But with that, that concludes our post-round interviews, and it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy Series, then why not check out the official Discord invite link available there on screen. And well, if you do click on that, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking, I love Skip Barber Formula Machines, I want to be out on that grid, or head to the Discord and definitely let us know, because there's still spaces on the grid if you do want to join. And indeed, the more the merrier, as we say. And you've seen just the calibre of the racing today from all of our drivers, and it will continue all the way through the season. Because again, we're making sure the Skip Barber Formula doesn't die, we're keeping the Skippy alive. But also, we'd like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Musical Money, their web address www.musical-money.co.uk, and of course, Musical Money, the quick, easy and safe way to turn your musical equipment into money. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now look ahead to next time, and in a week's time, we head down under to what previously was known as Mount Wahulu, now known as Mount Panorama, but you all know and love it as Bathurst. Well, that's right, we're in Australia for rounds 5 and 6. Join us on Friday the 31st of March 2023 as our drivers ascend and descend from the mountain and look to survive in the run over it. But who will have the guts, the glory and the courage behind them in order to take victory there? We'll find out then, but until then, we have been Gone Skipping Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX14 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, have a great weekend ahead. Remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.